Well, I know there are a lot of little ins and outs as far as what they call interference.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I had a bunch of just metal objects sitting on the cords. Why
I
not?
had a
Why
giant
not do that?
magnet. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I had a giant magnet next to my
Yeah.
computer, just
I'm in a wind tunnel right now at Boeing. We're testing a few things. Just don't if there's nuts and bolts, don't pay attention. But as long as you can hear me, we're good.
Dystopia tonight.
Fuck out of town! Fucking treasonous pieces of shit!
Dystopia tonight.
it's funny that you say that. I literally ate an entire pizza last night by myself, like
Yeah.
just like a real piece of shit. So you're like, look at 10 pounds heavier, and I was like, I think he might
I
be
don't
right.
I don't eat
Like that.
pizza any other way, really. I mean, if I'm
It's
being
just by
cordial and we're out having, like, tapas and somebody's like, "Oh, let's get the apple
yeah.
gorgonzola pizza." I'm like, "Sure, yes, I'll have a slice of that." But,
Yeah,
no, I
yeah,
will
whatever
go
that
to
is.
Costco and just order the large pizza and just sit in my car and eat it.
Yep. Oh, dude, pizza in the car coming home. Joanne Filan?
I know that name. I don't know if Joanne and I
Okay.
have hung out.
She Okay, she's a good comic. She's a great buddy of mine, and we'll go on the road together. And literally, the amount of times we've like found a Domino's that's open after the weekend, after the gig, and then just put it on the
Yeah.
dash and driven back. That's my favorite way to eat pizza.
Well, when I met Chad Daniels, I was featuring for Chad in, like, I wanna say it had to be Des Moines, and,
Ooh.
whenever during that time, like, when I would feature for somebody and they didn't know me, I would just
Mhm.
immediately, like, call down to the front desk and ask for their name and then their room number. The phone would ring in their hotel room, and they're not expecting a call, and then I would just be
Right.
like, "Hello, is this Chad Daniels? We have some, flowers for you. Do you want us to bring them up to the room, or do you wanna come down to the front and get them? They're very nice. They're roses. They're from a man named Fred? Do you know a Fred? Why would he be giving you roses?" Like, I just, like, slowly, like, play up this thing. Um, but, they don't know me, and then eventually there's always some silly reveal, and, I
Yeah.
think with Bo Burnham, I called and I was like, "Hey, we have, a few jars down here of your grandmother's pussy juice. Do you know what this is about?" And Bo was, like, 18 at the time, and he's like, "My grand what who is this?" And, then I
Oh my
introduced myself,
god.
but Chad and I, we connected, we laughed. I don't remember how the flowers bit
Nice.
went. I wish I could remember the big punch on that one, but, we ended up getting, like, pizza that weekend because we were like, "Oh, no, I get my own." And he's like, "No, I get my
Oh,
own."
yes.
And then Chad goes, "Well, we should probably get wings then too." Like, it becomes like a big dick contest at some point. And then we
Yeah.
just sat there,
Yeah.
and then we just ate until we were very sad, and it
Oh
was
yeah.
great.
Nothing counts on the road. No amount of food, alcohol, whatever it is non-existent until you get back home and feel the after effects. And I think I've trained my brain so well to the point where I really don't feel it until I get back into my own
Mm,
house and I'm like, I'm near death. How the fuck did I drive
yeah.
home?
So, I think because
It's
I
bad.
started going out on the road in my early 20s, I just did whatever I wanted, and it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Nothing mattered.
Right.
And then,
No.
I would say we went through a little, pandemic and then, came out the other end, and I
What?
started going out on the road, and then it just feels awful out there. I
Yeah, it
feel
does.
I
It
feel
really
I'm
does.
not only older, but, like, the options for eating have decreased, and that
Yeah,
the Domino's
everywhere.
example that you gave is a prime one. Like, I was out on the road someplace and Domino's closed at 11, and I knew that, so I was
Yeah.
trying to order a pizza at 10:30, and they were like, "Yeah, sorry,
Mhm.
we don't have enough drivers." And I was like, "Wow, I even
Yeah,
planned
man.
for Domino's and didn't get it."
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything closes early, and also, if you even get there, like I went to this place where on the road. I don't even know. I think it was like an Applebee's, like one of those chain shit or whatever. And I went to order something fucking generic, Like, I think I was like, I just wanted like a chicken wrap, whatever, the
Uh-huh.
buffalo chicken wrap. And they were like, we're out of chicken. And I was like, you guys have another hour that you're supposed to still be like, I got here
Mhm.
and they were like, okay. And then I ordered something else and they were like, they would leave and come back. I'm like, we're out of that too. I'm like, does somebody in the kitchen hate
Right.
me?
Yeah, yeah.
Did they go to the show and fucking hit like,
They
what is
started
happening
packing
right now?
up and
And
they're
they
just
just don't,
done.
they just stopped.
Um, I was at a
Yeah, they're
place
just
in,
done.
I guess it was St. Louis, and, like, it says right there on the door, they close it at 9:30, and,
Oh yeah.
I'm walking in the door at 9:15, and it is locked, and I look at the person through the door, and they look at me, and I point at the sign that says the hours, and then they come and they unlock it, and
Yeah.
they're like, "What's going on?" I was like, "This says you're open till 9:30," and they're like, "Well, yeah, but we need time
Hmm.
to clean up." And I was like,
Oh
well,
my
yes, I thought
God.
that's why you closed at 9:30, so then you could clean
Yeah.
up and not be here till 2
Yeah.
AM. Excuse me, I didn't know how restaurants
Yeah.
work.
Sounds like a you problem,
Yeah,
buddy. Like, what the fuck?
yeah,
All of it's getting really shitty, man. Even just not only just being on the road and doing that kind of stuff too, but like still coming out of COVID, still dealing with COVID shit, all that other crap. But I was like, I think it's gonna, I think for people who are self-aware, this is gonna be kind of maddening because like there's restaurants that we used to go to that, like you said, we were just talking about, close early. Nothing's open anymore. The IHOP's no longer 24 hours in the town we used to, hang out in or
yeah.
whatever. Diners are non-existent. And then like other smaller facets of that where like you do go back to places that are your staples and they don't have the things that make those places unique. You know what I mean? To, like a reason to go there.
Give me an
So you're
example
like,
of something like that.
so there's this place, in where I live in New Jersey or whatever, and there's this place that used to have like a particular dessert. It was like a watermelon sherbet thing or whatever the hell they used to have. It was
Okay.
famous for this kind of thing. You would go there and get all the time. They just
Ah,
stopped after COVID. So like there's that, and it's one of those things that when you tell somebody, like I'm sure you've experienced too, where they're just like, "All right, guy, get over it." But you're like, it's not just that though, because you
that's
do
happening
go, "Oh,
everywhere.
that sucks."
Yeah.
That
You're like, it's
yeah,
not just the one
yeah, and
place, like, things are
right,
disappearing all over, and I think
yeah,
part of that too, there's this psychological element that, even though wages have gone up. Allegedly, the Wall
yeah,
Street's very happy. They just
right,
reported that
right,
Q4 of 2023 was really, really gangbusters. Hey, you know,
right,
um, certainly my quality of life has not decreased. I mean, I'm
right,
not
right,
pinching pennies for things, but it also does
yeah,
feel like things are more expensive. And every time you buy
yeah,
anything, you go, Jesus, come on. But
yep,
that's
yeah,
literally just the psychological effect of goods and services getting more expensive because of a global pandemic, and we all can
yeah,
afford it, we just think we can't, and then we have that inner
right,
struggle every time we make a purchase, which in a capitalist society is
yeah.
with everything. I mean, all of our bills are going
Yeah.
up, all of our rents are going up, everything's just increasing.
Yeah. Well, for the other thing too is like I've noticed for myself, I'm a little less tolerant of food being not as great because of the way the prices have gone up too. And I'm like, and I try very like I always go like, okay, the waiter, it's not their fault. I'm not gonna lose my shit. I'm not one of those old dudes that's like, it's your problem, kid, and you should have made,
Yeah.
whatever. But it is one of those things where like I feel bad about it, but I'll be like, I gotta send this back
Uh-huh.
because and also risk getting it spit on or whatever because I'm like, it's now, $20 more than it usually is. And I just want to, enjoy the thing that I know they could make well,
Mhm.
even though for some reason right now they decided to go, I just hand
Yeah.
it to me, you know, and it's just shit like that I notice will drive me crazy. I did something that I was in a restaurant and for whatever reason, my friends and I went in there and it was like, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So it wasn't packed by any means. Like a few other people are scattered in there, but they just had country music blasting. And I don't mean like Willie Nelson. I mean like fucking horseshit stadium country music. And just it was like every other song. I thought it was like one or two. I could stand it, but I couldn't take it anymore. And I got up. I told my friend, I go, I'm so sorry. I have to do this. This is breaking me right now. And I think I already was like in a bad mood, but I just walked over to our waitress who was behind the counter of the thing. And I went, can you just ask your manager to change the station? Because if she doesn't, I'm going to blow my fucking head off in the restaurant. And thankfully our waitress, like this big black woman, she laughed and she just went to me, honey, you're doing me a favor. I was like, that's the best response
Yeah.
ever. But like, you could, our the manager was so fucking annoyed. She, as soon as our receipt came down, she fucking blasted the country music again. Like, we didn't even get up to
Yeah.
leave, and I was just
Right.
like, but you know what I mean? Where you're just like, you're in a restaurant. It's supposed to be generic
Yeah.
something. It's not supposed to be your favorite
Mhm.
hits. You're the best top 10 from your Spotify. You fucking
Yeah.
nut. Like, the shit you're putting in the
I mean,
background of your TikTok videos with your
my,
boyfriend.
and how many people were working? Just the manager and the one server and maybe a cook? Yeah,
Yeah,
so the
yeah,
manager's like, "My restaurant, my choice," and it's like,
exactly.
it's this, it's the classic idea of freedom that is dividing people more and more, which is, what's good for me is what's good for the group. And you go, "No,
Right,
that's not how this works. Uh, can't
right,
smoke
right.
anymore, there's no freedoms. Have to wear a seatbelt, there's no freedoms. Can't abort a
Yep,
fetus, there's no
exactly.
freedoms." Like, you know,
Right.
and what's weird is they'll do 2 of those, but then that 3rd one, they go, "No, that's not. That's a different thing."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
It's definitely
my
picking and
my wife and
choosing.
I were in a restaurant. We're sitting there. We're having sushi on Melrose, and
Hmm.
we're the only 2 customers. There's 1 server, 1 sushi chef, and we were seated at a table, not at the bar, which is always a little weird with
Hmm.
sushi. Like you kind of go, well, it's traditional. We're the only people here. You sit us at the bar and you feed us.
Yeah.
We sat at a table,
Right.
and there's like weird, like hip hop, but like an EDM remix playing, and at first I'm like, "Okay, this song's a little long." And then I looked at my wife and I'm like, they're just playing this one song on repeat, right?" And she said, "Yeah."
Right.
And so I get up and I go over to the one server and I say, "Excuse me, I think this song, I think it's played 4 times now." And she said, "Has
Right.
it?" I said, "I think so." And so then she goes to the back and does whatever. But, in situations like that, I'm like, "Oh, she's just on
Yeah.
fentanyl. It's fine. She's just trying to get through work." I'm not gonna get mad at her, like, she chose it, but she is
Right.
so,
Right.
ground down by life that she's just in this kind of buzz all the time, doesn't
Hmm.
know what's happening around her. But,
Yeah.
you know
And you don't want to be one of those dudes who winds up on somebody's, like where you actually wind up flipping out because you also had a
Right.
bad day, and then the phones come out, and then you're that lunatic who throws a soda back in.
Yeah,
I understand the process
yeah.
of that, so I'm like, I just don't want that to happen
So do
either.
you think we just got to this place where, Uh, we saw that basically economically there was not going to be any better choice than capitalism, but we also didn't know how capitalism was going to pan out. Like it didn't look like that was a bright future
Yeah,
either. So instead of
right,
like doing the American dream thing where people were really like fighting to be fuck you rich, everybody kind of like laid back and
right.
went, well, you know what? I'm fuck you poor. I'm just going to do that. I'm going to do
Yeah,
whatever the fuck I
I
want no matter what. And what are you going to do about it? Because it's a free country. And so then you just end up with these needless conflicts over things like airline seating and music and restaurants. And you go, all right, everybody, I guess we're just going to fight all the time now.
Yeah, no, I agree to an extent too, because I'm like, I always feel bad. Like, in the back of my head, I think that what always keeps me somewhat tempered is like, I understand they don't want to be there, and I've been in that situation too, and I've worked all those fucking jobs, and I don't want to be there either. But I've always felt a certain level of responsibility to the other. Like, how do you go from, I'm not making any money, this is a shit job, I fucking hate it, to everybody else is against me? Because there's been a number of times in those situations where I've had to go, look, dude, I'm not fucking living on high either, man. I'm not taking private jets or hanging out either.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. I'm
literally
not the
handing you
enemy.
my, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, so just work with me here. I mean, and the other thing too is like just the fucking complete and total lack of common sense or something. That shit will drive me through a fucking wall. I ordered food. I love how yours were like, my wife and I went out for sushi, and I'm like, my friends and I are hanging out and we go to Wendy's. This is gonna be a
Right.
Wendy's. But
I'm in
it
the
is
back of the subway and somebody didn't wipe the tables off. Come
yeah,
on, Subway.
yeah, yeah.
Trying
But
to
like,
enjoy a footlong.
but
And I'm like,
this
so
is
we were having this Chateaubriand, and it's supposed to be rare, medium
Ex-
rare, but it was,
exactly.
yeah,
I don't know why I can't. I know there've been good places I've gone to where I've had problems, but another thing is like this is what I'm talking about though. It's like the bare fucking minimum, right? You're not expecting it's gonna be, you're at a McDonald's drive-through. It's gonna be shit. I'm expecting already the lowest level of whatever it is because we're either just coming home from a night out. We're probably drunk. We're hanging out. So we literally stop at this fast food place or whatever, and we order, everything. You know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
haven't seen each other a long time. We're hanging out, so we get food, we get the fries, we also get the ice cream too. We're just like we're all gonna go back to my friend's house. It's like 5 minutes away. We do this shit, and of course, with us it stops. So the food's not fucking ready. Fast food. So they're like, oh, we don't have any burgers and fries, right now. So you guys got to wait
We
a little
ran
bit.
out of cups. We don't have
Yeah,
cups.
and then this motherfucker hands us the ice cream and then tells us to move over to the side. So now we're sitting in the car and there's
Just with
this
ice cream.
with ice cream that we're not ready to. And like it's just one of the, like one I don't want to eat I don't want to eat my ice cream. There's four of whatever the whole none of us. So and I just thought, okay, he handed us the ice cream, so it's gonna be a couple minutes tops. It's not gonna be that bad, right? Right? It's a fast food restaurant. They're banging it out. 20 so I just went back into the thing with melted ice cream and I just went, I gotta ask you, man, who know you knew how long this was gonna be and what were you think? I had to know. I was like, I don't
Uh-huh.
even fucking care if we leave and get nothing. I need to know the thought process behind
Yeah.
I'll give these fucks their ice. I'm like, did you
Right.
I just want to know
Yeah, yeah.
because he's old enough to not do that. He's not 12,
Sure.
but yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, I've certainly been in those situations where I've done stupid things like that, where if somebody confronted me like that, I would be like, "Yeah, I should not have given you the ice cream. You're absolutely
Right.
right. Let
Right.
me take these back. Do you want more ice cream? Because that was on me. That was a bad one."
Right.
Like, just admitting fault
Yes.
is a
Yes.
huge thing. Like, we really did alter as a society at one point too, where, um, we decided that if you were wrong about something, it was some sort of personal failure.
Yeah.
And you go, "No, no, that's not how being wrong works. Being wrong, you're
Right.
allowed to be wrong about all
Yeah.
sorts of things. You could be wrong repeatedly and still go, I was wrong about that. Let
Yeah.
me change course here." And nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody
No.
wants to admit they're wrong. They just want to like double down and you go, "Oh, this is going to cause a lot more conflict.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh yeah.
This is why we're angry all the time." It reminds me of this thing where, they did a psychological study where they paired really smart people with people who were not so smart, and
Mhm.
as a team, they would, like, answer questions,
Yeah.
and what they found was that in order to be diplomatic, the smarter person would go with the dumber person's answer to certain questions, knowing, "This idiot's wrong, but I want them to feel like we're collaborating." And I want them to feel like we're a team and that I trust them as a teammate. And I
Right.
don't necessarily know if that's a good thing or a bad thing because, developing trust, kind of
Yeah.
a crucial element of how we became the dominant species.
Yeah.
So pretty good.
Yeah.
If you're really, really smart, you see the long-term benefit of like, yeah, let this dummy be wrong about the trivia question as long as they
Right.
trust
Right.
me when the war happens. It's
Yes.
totally fine. You go, I'll let this go for the better reason. But
Yeah.
if you are a smart person, you find yourself in those situations a lot where you kind of go, I know this person's wrong. Is it worth it for me to confront them?
Yeah.
Or do I just shrug
Yeah.
and,
Exactly.
and hope that things pan out later?
Right.
And it's real hard to shrug sometimes, especially when the dumber person has an attitude.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's when I kind of break. That's when I usually
Yeah,
break. When I'm like, okay, now if we never speak again, I don't care because here's how it's gonna go
right.
down. You had one of the best accounts that I used to follow all the time. Uh, I can't remember the name of it now, but you used to do it kind of what we're talking about right now, which is dissecting fucking these idiot articles and like whatever, you know what I mean? Like just it was about just comedy shit. But it was like you would
Oh,
just
yeah,
take
yeah.
I can't what was the name of your account?
So, it was called and it was I was trying to build up to do a podcast, and I
Oh.
recorded, like, 5 episodes, but, the premise of the podcast was I get onto my favorite search engine, and I type in the word "joke," and then I
Mhm.
filter the results for news, and then the last 24 hours, and then I just look at people arguing that they were upset by some sort of joke.
Right.
And, so the account on Instagram was called "You Hate Jokes."
That's it.
And
That's it.
so, I would just post, the headline, and then I would kinda talk about it. But, for the podcast, I would have just people on, and, we would typically get through, like, 6 or 7 news stories just about jokes. And,
Nice.
it was just one of those things where, Somebody canceled on the day that we were supposed to record, and I stumbled and ran out of steam, and then it just kind of went away. But it's still one of my favorite things. And I ran the
Yeah.
experiment for a long time before starting the trying to do the podcast, and
Nice.
literally spent, I think it might have been like really every day for a month, just trying to see how many things are out there
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah.
And it is one of those things that people do not realize, that politicians tell jokes. There are jokes on bumper stickers. There are jokes on t-shirts. There are jokes. One of my favorite stories ever was this pizza delivery driver. You probably know him. This pizza delivery driver was they received an order, and in the notes on the order, the online order, it said, please write a joke under the lid of the pizza box. That
Okay.
was, and you kind of go, okay, well, the delivery driver decides to write the joke, delivering to the pizza to this neighborhood that's clearly like a college neighborhood,
Right.
and they're ordering pizza at like 2 in the afternoon, and delivers the pizza. And then the restaurant gets a phone call. It's this mother. She is outraged because her 13-year-old and 11-year-old ordered a pizza. They wanted a joke under the box. And here's the
Right.
joke. The joke was, how is a pizza delivery driver different from a gynecologist? They can both smell it, but they can't eat it. It's kind of yeah, that was under the lid of the box.
Okay. That's fucking amazing.
So it's, yeah, how's a pizza delivery driver the same as a gynecologist? Yeah, they can both smell it, but they can't eat it. So these kids, of course, got the thing, and this pizza delivery driver gets fired like a week before Christmas.
Right.
And as you start to talk about this story, and you talk about like the choices that were made of which joke to write, and the idea that these aren't joke professionals, this is a
Yeah.
Papa John's, for God's sakes. What are you doing? You're
Right.
just requesting a joke from people who don't make jokes. I might as well
Right.
request a tailored suit from Arby's, for God's sakes. I mean, why? There's no connection there.
Yeah.
I know this is a grocery store, but you guys, can you paint me a portrait? Um, so then you realize that and once people get their feelings out about like sexism and a joke like that, and how women might feel, you go, oh, no, the pizza delivery driver was a woman. Did
Right.
you think the delivery driver was a dude? Because that's not what happened either. And so as you kind of unfurl all of these details, you realize like people's outrage, they're almost looking for all of the different billions of reasons why a joke is bad, without
Right.
looking at the one reason why the joke is good. And you
Mhm.
go, oh yeah, that's how jokes work.
Yeah.
If you point
Exactly.
out, if you're able to point out 10 reasons why the joke is bad when you have a billion to choose from, that's like finding a piece of hay in a haystack.
Right. Right.
Like, it doesn't make you special. It's finding the
Yeah.
needle that makes you special. That's what
Yeah.
proves that you have a sense of humor. And
Right.
but people got into this outrage thing because that got clicks on the internet, and they
Yeah.
became very practiced at like, well, let's bag on the joke for this new reason.
Right.
And usually it was just their own psychosis, their own just like dreadful, uh, willful disdain for the joke and not
Yeah.
wanting to get it.
Right.
And how easy it is to just sit there and righteously say, well, it wasn't funny.
Oh my
Okay,
God.
great. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that subjective little tidbit.
Yeah.
But
I don't know what that
I
means.
always found it fascinating. So I decided
Yeah.
to play with it some. And I think it grinded down on my soul a little bit.
I understand that
It's hard to
completely
see
because
people do the same thing over and over and over. And you go, how do we stop this? And you go, oh,
yeah.
we're not stopping this. This is an avalanche.
Yeah. And you still can't, and that's the thing though too. That's another fucking present and gift from capitalism is that people figured out how to monetize their outrage. So your net, like that was part of the avalanche. Was that
Yeah.
half of the time it was like, is this person genuinely upset? Probably not. I don't even know what
Right.
they, and if you actually looked through their social media, they said way worse shit than the
Oh, yeah.
comedian they just saw doing something. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
especially between friends. So you're like, okay, so there's clearly no real barometer here. It's just can I get my name out there a little bit more? And then you kind of try to figure out, well, what do they do for, like, if you figure out if they were a journalist or if they were a college student trying to be like somebody was, it always seemed like our career or jokes in general became this stepping stone to their next goal. And if their next goal was either attention, whatever it was.
Right.
And then the other thing that I find, and I've talked about it ad nauseum, and I'll still talk about it, is just what happened to comedians, what happened to us. And I'm shocking. I'm a left wing dude or whatever, liberal dude, or whatever you want to call it. But like I blame the
You're a
left.
pussy. You're a pussy,
I
and
was
that's
I
oh,
didn't know.
that's totally
No,
fair.
no, it's fine.
I
No,
mean,
no. But
it
you're
left wing, right wing, it really depends on where you are, 'cause I grew up in Texas, where I'm considered a
oh yeah,
complete literal liberal nutbag, and then here in Los Angeles, they think that I'm a proud boy.
concerned.
So I'm like,
Yeah,
"Oh, oh, good."
yeah,
Um,
dude. I love when I've had people online, depending on what's if I ever attack Democrats, which is kind of often, or any, especially like during the thing, I've had people call me a frat boy, blah blah blah, and I'm like, you couldn't like. I love it because I think that's fucking hysterical because they're all there.
yeah,
They're not using their brain. They're just trying to figure out what category I could fit into that might. And
yeah,
I screenshot that kind of stuff because I'm like, I just think it's funny. Like I'm like, I've been
yeah,
called a frat. I've been called a liberal cuck commie
yeah.
faggot from the whatever to a frat boy wannabe whatever whatever the fuck, the Joe Rogan something something, and I'm just like, god damn, man, you guys are, this is beautiful, thank you for believing I could be all these things.
Well, you can either be on my team or you can be the worst thing ever, and those are the
Right,
only
right.
choices.
Yeah.
But you were saying that
Oh yeah, so what
the
I
thing you've
think.
talked about ad nauseum that's happened to comics
Yeah.
is
So
what?
what I believe is the thing that happened is I think for a very long time we were great. People, we told jokes, we were kind of under the radar, and then when we started to get some attention, I think the left wing kind of figured like, oh, okay, wow, this can actually be used to help our cause. You know what I mean? I think like
Yeah,
when to a certain extent, because I don't think the right was very comedian, or like, for the most part, the right didn't really accept comedy in a way that was like they do now. You know what I mean? They're not recruiting comedians to recruit a certain group of people, because now the way the right does it is they go, we love jokes. We don't think
yeah,
you're a piece of shit for laughing at that. Come to, whatever. So that's what I
right,
think they're
right,
pretty good at doing. But for the left side of it, it was a lot for, I think for a while, they were like, okay, great. We can use this medium and use comedians as the arbiters of morality to a certain extent, and they can do it through jokes. But the problem is that we'll tell jokes about something we're passionate in, the same way like a Daily Show type thing will do, or whatever it is. But the minute you tell a joke about something they disagree with, or they're
mhm,
not, and to us it's just all jokes, so it doesn't really,
right,
you know what I mean, but they get to go, we're very disappointed in you, why would you straight, we need to work
yeah,
on your
yeah, yeah,
narrative. And it's like, it's not my fucking narrative. My narrative
right,
is just jokes in general, and whether I do believe, like, I'll tell jokes about things that I don't really believe, like I wouldn't go vote that way, but it's funny, and I'm gonna
right,
do it, whatever it is, or I'm
of
gonna tell
course,
climate
yeah,
jokes
yeah,
because they're fucking hysterical, and it's just, whatever. But I think it became this thing where, oh, okay, if we can skew how they think and feel and act, and we can penalize them for it in the media, in the press, because comedians want press, and you need it
right,
if you want what
right.
we. So does that make sense? Like, you know what I
Well,
mean?
I mean, I started my stand-up career in San Francisco, so I was dealing with this kind of attitude from the audience as far back as like 2000, 2001.
Right,
And it was a very liberal-minded idea that, "Oh, I'm not offended by the joke, but I can imagine a person who might be offended.
right,
So now on behalf of my imaginary friend, I'm gonna have to complain and then stand up." And the language of our culture and of the internet kind of put them in this place where they're like, "Oh, now I get to be offended and be a hero for being offended because now I'm proving that I'm a good ally to this victimized group, or I
right.
am part of the victimized group. So now I need my dues as a victim." And you kind of go, "That was a joke about dogs."
Yeah,
That's what that
yeah,
joke was about.
yeah,
I don't know how you wanna deal with that, but it was just a dog joke.
yep,
And so the the very interesting thing for me was I remember, like, in 2000, maybe, like, 3 or 4, I remember Patton Oswalt getting on stage at Cobb's Comedy Club, San Francisco, and just opening up by being like, "Fuck George Bush," and the crowd, like, erupts and they
yeah,
scream. And then, 2017, I happen to be in San Francisco, and I pop into a club, and the comic on stage is like, "And you know what? Fuck Donald Trump." And the liberal San Francisco crowd, like, I looked over and they just kinda went, "Uh." Almost the same idea of like, "Oh, but there might be conservative people here who don't
Wow.
like you saying fuck Donald Trump. So I don't want them to have a bad time, even though I don't know whether they're here or not. Like this idea that you can imagine a victim literally takes no effort.
Right. No.
And so then to just bring that into the show as though it's a reality,
Right.
they started thinking that was a righteous and good thing to do. And then they started doing it more often. Then, to your point, they did it online where they could get clicks for it.
Yeah.
And also, I think this is an important idea, reach out to other people who were not at the show, who
Yeah.
don't have any context for what was said or what happened. And those people can all get together like a nice, angry little tribe and say, yeah, fuck these comedians. And you
Yeah.
go, these comedians, it was one person telling one
Yeah.
joke, and then your reporter doesn't even remember what the joke is.
Yep. I had helped a friend who wanted to do stand up. She was in LA. She just wanted to try it out or whatever. And she'd never done any of it before. But like, I think she kept going to this one particular bar. And then like her friends there and the people who worked there were kind of like, oh, you know, you're pretty funny and you seem to have some stuff to say. You should do stand up. And she was, you know, just overly sensitive about a lot of different things and whatever the hell it was. But she wrote this thing and she thought it was, going to be when she sent it to me and she was like, what do you think? Is this going to be funny? And a lot of it was like therapy stuff and then anti-men's, like around the time of, it was like a 2017, 2018 type of thing or whatever.
Yeah.
Probably 2017. And I was like, okay, I see where you're going with it. So I literally just was like, I'm going to punch this up for you, and whatever. And I took, the stuff I gave her, wrote her jokes, I even threw some, different stuff in there that I thought would be helpful to her that I thought she was trying to say. She loved it. I had the whole thing out. She goes and does it. She gets it on tape. She does well. The jokes are landing. She kind of still straight, like does some of her own things or whatever. But at that point, it's like, whatever. So she goes and does it. And people are writing under her thing. And they're like, finally, a woman, with a point of, with like a thing and women can't, and blah, blah, blah. And, whatever. And I was just like, she never said she got help from her comedian friend who happens to be a dude.
No.
Which, why would you? That wouldn't be the thing.
No,
But
of
it was
course.
also one of those
Yeah.
things. Yeah. Like, but I was like, it was just one of those things that I was like, man, it doesn't matter. Like, and then they were like, you got to do it again. And of course she could. And not that I refused to help her again, but I was like, I gave it to you once. I set you on the path. You got the idea. Keep going. Never did it again. But it was literally that thing of like, I found that so interesting to me that I was like, oh, it's just, they need that perception. You know what I mean? Like that's the thing that they wanted. Didn't care if they said, if I did those jokes, I don't know that anybody would have given a shit about it. But for her, it was like, get her in the fucking news, get her a special, whatever it was. And I was like, that's so interesting to me. Like there's that example. And I don't know if you've ever come across this kind of thing where, like I feel this way about the election, like the election when I was like, when Hillary was running against Trump or whatever, that kind of thing. I was kind of blown away by everyone's sort of reaction to her past and things they were willing to ignore because, it was going to be the first female president. Right. And like, I was, I liked Warren, I liked Bernie Sanders, I like those kind of people or whatever. And I just really liked those ideas. I'm that's just where I fall or whatever. And obviously Hillary versus Trump, no contest. Obviously you got to do the thing that you're going to do. But I was stunned that people were not willing to have that conversation. They didn't want to acknowledge any of the past shit because there's people like that they needed a female to be whatever they imagined them to be. And I first couldn't wrap my head around it. Then I saw it again. And with Buttigieg, where I kept saying stuff about like his transportation, like I was like, that guy fucking sucks, man. And I get it. And then one of my friends who was gay just privately messaged me and was like, hey dude, I just need to have this. And I was like, totally antithetical to politics, totally antithetical to what we need in the next 4 years. It was just this guy looks and sounds, or his, mirrors me. And I can't wrap my head around it, dude. It really bums me out that like, it's all,
I think it's a little related to the idea of perfectionism a little bit, which is, people want to think that, all right, I'm voting for this person and they are part of my group. And so I don't want to acknowledge any flaws because they're part of my group.
Right.
And you go, all right, well, it doesn't seem like a good way to lead a country. But all right, I don't know.
Exactly.
And by the way, I say this as somebody who is like, I struggle with perfectionism a lot.
Sure.
I mean,
Yeah.
and a lot of other people, they look at something and they don't know, like, oh, what's not perfect about this,
Right.
but I know because I'm the one
Yeah.
that put it together. And so it's driving me crazy. Nobody else notices. And it's something where you're 99% done with something and you could just put it out there, or you could spend the next 6 to 8 months perfecting that little last 1% that no
Yeah.
one will ever recognize. And
I.
you get perfectionism paralysis and all those things. But
Yeah.
yeah, that idea of needing your political candidates to be perfect, I think also goes hand in hand with not willing to be wrong about anything.
Yeah.
The idea that
True.
it goes, yes, that point about Pete, that's a good point. I'm
Right.
going to let you have that. I'm going to let you have that and agree with you on it. But this other
Yeah.
point, I'm going to lean into this. It's more important to me. At least
Yeah. Yeah.
acknowledge it. But
Exactly. And the
yeah,
acknowledgement thing is the thing that I find so like the big like it's like a cognitive dissonance where I'm just like, I can't believe we've been arguing that that part of it doesn't exist. I would
right.
respect people so much better if they were like, hey man, I like that person's jacket. And that's my jacket policies are
Yeah,
strictly how, is it 100% leather? Like that kind of shit. I'll just go, okay, cool. At least I know who you are and I
right.
and I know what to expect and I know what your priorities are at and that's fine with me. But the rewriting of events or whatever the hell it is, I'm like, man,
Sure.
I can't handle that shit. I find that fucking
Right.
frustrating.
Right, right. Well, the rewriting of COVID, the rewriting of January
Yeah,
6th, the rewriting of, what was Trump like pre-presidency? Like, even with this new Trump campaign, it's like, yeah, do you guys not remember he was going to build the wall? He was going to lock her up. He was going to repeal and replace Obamacare. Like, do you guys not want to acknowledge that those things didn't happen? And
yeah,
all of his supporters go, yes, that's correct.
right, right, yeah, and
They've
they're
they've
fine with
taken
it.
it to this new extreme, and because they're fine with it and there's no combating it, I think there's this level of kind of stupidity in the culture that goes, well, if that works for them, I guess I'll do it too.
Yep,
There's no problem that the country music is on blast in my restaurant and I'm the only one who likes it. There's no problem
exactly,
with
man.
it. I don't remember anybody complaining. Do you remember?
Yeah, yeah. It's all tit for tat shit. It's like, okay, we can't keep doing this forever because no one's gonna win here, and everything
Yeah.
else is gonna slip away. And that's
Yeah.
the like, and to an extent too, I feel badly for you know, and I know I'm not supposed to because they're boomers or whatever the fuck people like to call them and shit. But I really do feel badly for our parents and if anybody, my grandparents are all passed on at this point. But I know some people have got It sucks for them, and I know it's like not a popular opinion, but you got to think about it. Like I think their parents and their grandparents before them there were still bridges that they had between the generations where there was still stuff that they were very much used to that existed. And I think for
Right.
our parents and grandparents, that those bridges are pretty much fucking gone. There's nowhere like everything is basically online, especially after COVID. So their whole, world of like, I'll just go find this in the store. I can't tell you how many times I've talked to my mom or
Yeah.
an older relative where they're like, they'll go into a thing and it's like, but I saw it here. And they're like, oh, you got to get it online. They don't get to go out to do that kind of shit. They're shitty. People online are telling them they're shitty, not them directly, but they see it if they like Christmas. You know what I mean? Like all the stuff that like, you
Uh-huh.
know, I feel bad. I don't think they're capable of handling all of that input. And I've seen it kind of, fuck them up in certain aspects. And I'm like,
Right.
that's another thing I don't know how to stop or pull the, reins back on.
Yeah, because and they don't want to admit that there are ways that they did have it easier.
Yes,
Like when
exactly.
it's pointed out to them that like, hey, you had a booming population and more people means uh, bustling economy. That's just
Yeah.
what that means. That's how the GDP grows. That is one of
Hmm.
the three ways that we get bigger GDP is just more
Yeah.
people. And you had a ton of people. And then
Yeah.
those people started having kids. Like you guys were just surfing this wave. And,
Yeah.
you know, um, you could afford a house if you were a barber. You could,
Yeah. Yeah, what
you
was
had
it,
all
like
these great
30K?
things.
Yeah,
Yeah, they
30K in like 1980 something was like 164,000. It was equivalent to 164,000 a year.
yeah, yeah, and they instead of noting that, oh yeah, I guess the economy has changed. Oh yeah, millennials didn't have a ton of kids and for
Right.
some reason make six figures and can't afford a home.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Instead of acknowledging that, they want to say like, well, no, because we had the Iran uh, conflict and we had this other thing and you don't remember polio, and they just want to like go down this list of
Yep.
things that they dealt with, and we're like,
Yeah.
yeah, we're not saying you didn't deal with those things. We're
Right.
saying that congrats, but you also had things that were very nice that we don't have.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
they want that cognitive dissonance where they go, no,
Yep.
no, not a chance.
And also that
um
level of security that they had enabled them to do things like raise a child, semi. By normally, I don't mean the child turned out normal. I just mean within the confines of like a home, a family unit, a community probably, or whatever the hell they did it in. Whereas
yeah,
now it's just not, it's all everything's a struggle, and I have
right.
trouble kind of translating that to even friends of mine, like people that I know who are on the right side, whether they're on the right side fully or even on the right side a little bit, because they just don't want to hear it or see it. And I don't know what that's
Mm,
about. I'm like, because I'm
yeah,
like, you are living it though. Like I'm like talking to them and I'm like, we have the same problem here. So I don't know why you think acknowledging that makes you weak, but they
right,
refuse to.
right.
And I'm just like, it
Yeah,
it's only gonna
yeah, yeah.
help you. I mean,
It's
just
only
just
gonna
just to
help you
acknowledge where you
to
are.
acknowledge, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
it's fascinating that, going back to that GDP thing, like,
Yeah.
if let's just say Trump gets elected, like, the only way he can grow the economy is to take on debt,
Mm-hmm.
because he can't force the population to grow unless he
Nope.
allows all these immigrants to come in, which he's already said, "No, we can't do that." I mean,
Right.
that would be a quick fix to make the economy grow though, right?
Absolutely.
Um, I don't know what I'm choking on, but I'm choking now. It's not
It's okay.
emotions.
You're just no, you let it out, man. Let
I
it. This
feel
is the
like I
time
had
to
a
do it.
I feel like I had a peanut like 6 years ago, and now, like, just the skin of it, like, was just, like, stuck in my gums or something like that, and then it just went down my throat during this we're 47 minutes into the podcast, and it just dislodged somehow.
I'm gonna rewind this in slow motion,
Yeah.
and you're just gonna see something shoot into your mouth, like someone's trying to kill you from
Yeah,
talking
and by
about
the
the
way,
GDP.
if we could see it in slow motion, I'd be like, "Oh, thank God, that makes more sense." A
Right?
gnat
Yes.
flew into my throat.
Oh,
Good, good,
yeah,
at
yeah.
least we know.
Instead of
Um
us speculating.
But yeah, I mean, we're not gonna have a bigger population. We're not gonna
Yeah.
become masters of industry again and start exporting goods to other parts of the world. The
Right.
only way to grow the economy is gonna be to take on debt. And people
Mhm.
just wanna believe that, no, Trump would never do that again.
Right.
He only did that because of COVID.
Yep.
Let's ignore the debt that he was taking on before COVID. But
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
it's people just flat out lying to themselves.
Yeah. Are you
And
good?
you go, we can't do that. I can't trust you if you don't trust you.
Yes, dude, that's a great point. Exactly. And that's the most frustrating thing about all this shit too, is that it's like I don't even think they understand that concept
Yeah,
at all. There's a fucking wall when it comes to that. And you're just like, I can't. I've tried to explain it in 5 different ways. It's not getting through.
yeah, right,
Like
right, right,
you
right.
gotta walk away. Do you find are you like I've kind of reduced this thing, but like I used to post all the time, kind of trying to change people's minds, you know what I mean, or just point it out. Like, have you are you good at kind of distancing yourself from that and going, look, there's no point in me shouting about this thing. I've reduced it. I'll only if something really kind of gets to me, I'll say my piece about it, but then we'll
Uh-huh.
kind of walk away. I've learned to like leave it because I can't change anybody.
Do you mean like arguing on social media?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Yeah. Fortunately, I always knew that was going to be a trap.
Oh, that's smart.
Always thought it was going to be a terrible, awful thing,
Mhm.
and I won't say I've never done it because every once in a while I'd be like, all right, we're gonna pick our battle on this one because this guy's real active and he's got 3 followers,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna pick a fight with him just because he just seems like a real asshole.
Mhm.
And then I will fight with that person a little bit, and then I will delete the thread. like completely.
Oh, that's fucking genius.
But for the most part, like as far as like getting into stuff on Facebook, I, I never did it. I
Yeah.
think my generation of comics that started in like 2000, 2001, we were all so hyper aware of of the comics that came before us, and we were hyper aware of the internet. And so
Mm,
you had people like, you know, Whitney Cummings and Aziz, who it was like immediately gangbusters, like this is a business. I'm going to
okay.
operate this like a business. And I was hyper aware of that idea that like, oh, I'm not putting any of my personal anything on the internet.
Smart.
Like for a long time, you wouldn't be able to find out who my friends were
Wow.
on via the internet, because I'm like,
Right.
no, 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 that's just a professional page. That's not for the public.
Nice.
Um, and the only reason that changed was because the culture changed, and the culture was like, yeah, we don't care about your professional, you know, credentials.
Yeah.
We want to know what do you like all the time. You're an
Yep.
entertainer, entertain us all the time. We want to
Yeah.
know what you're eating. We want to know where you're sleeping. We want to know what you do for fun. What are your hobbies? What do you feel about things?
Hmm.
And I went, yeah, I don't think I want to do this.
Right. Yeah, that's
Um,
the smartest route to take.
yeah,
Because when you try to do that kind of stuff, then you just feel like everything you're doing. I think for a while I thought like everything I was doing was somehow supposed to be marketable, or like I was supposed to use my time with people I loved or whatever the hell it is for, like, if there's a good video or if there's a good event, you got to put it up there because you never know what's going to hit, and you need
yeah,
the content, whatever the hell it is, and then it just becomes like your whole life becomes exhausting. But it seems to have only gotten worse because
yeah. You're
you know,
performing all the time,
yeah,
and then you have these like influencers who really are performing all the time,
yeah,
and that
and
constant grind for content.
mhm,
You're competing against other people who are constantly grinding for content, and you go, oh, this is not going to end well.
yeah,
This is
that's
not going to end up with a culture where we get to take a siesta at 3 p.m.
yeah.
This is just going to end up 18-hour workdays.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing I kind of find myself whenever I'm talking to like management or agencies or whatever the hell it is now, where I feel like sometimes I have to do so much fighting on my behalf to
Yeah,
not be like, look, you know, I've done all of this shit. And like, and some of it I don't necessarily put out there like 24/7. I don't know how people do it. Like, when you can see every little fucking tidbit that they've done or whatever, sometimes I forget. But at the same
yeah,
time, I'm like, look, like if I talk to somebody who I think is supposed to elevate my career in a certain way or do whatever, I'm like, hey, these are the bullet points. This is all the shit I've done. And I almost like, especially with the person is that I talk to, they're like, great, let's get those social media numbers up, and then we can do whatever. And I'm like, but I've done it. And they're like, did you do it yesterday? Did you do it today? So that fucking crushes me, man. And I think the fight is the other thing that bothers me, because I'm the type of person where it'll get in my head, or like I've just been talking about myself to some person who was already supposed to be on my team and on my side to begin with anyway, to the
right,
point where I'm like, holy fuck, what if I finally win this battle and I get an opportunity and I suck? Like, am I not good? Like, maybe I'm not good. You know what I mean? Like, if that
right.
gets in my head to begin with anyway, because I'm like,
Yeah, yeah.
I spent so much time fighting for this, and I know I'm not signed. You know what I mean? You're not like these, like whatever, but you just start questioning your own ability, and you're like, God, I'm gonna fucking tank. You know what I mean? At the moment, I need it most, and even if you haven't in a while, it's just one of those
Well,
things.
and by the way, that standard of value of like, well, what do your social media numbers look like? That standard, like, talk about cognitive, you know, dissonance.
Mm,
Like even the representatives know, they absolutely know that one day they're looking at somebody who they didn't have that many MySpace friends, and they didn't have that many Twitter friends, and then all of a sudden Instagram comes out and they've got 150,000, and you
yep.
go, "Oh, you just that wasn't the platform for you. Now there's a new platform. Now you've got high numbers, and you
Right.
didn't really change anything. You were
Right.
just presented in a different way.
Right.
And so now we're going to say you're talented. Now
Yeah.
you're worth our time." And you go, "No, no, no, no. This was always the same person. And you told
Yep.
me to fuck myself twice because my
Yes.
MySpace numbers weren't big enough and because my Twitter numbers weren't big enough. But now Instagram numbers are great, so I'm important. Fuck you."
Yeah, man.
Um, and by the
It,
way, I had the opposite because I was getting on television,
Yeah.
before a lot of people were on social media.
Right.
And um, nobody really knew who I was. But what was strange was I would get on TV and the network would be like, yeah, his numbers are so much higher than we expected.
Yeah.
Like I was doing a thing at MTV where they had like a celebrity launching a brand new show they were really excited about. They really did a lot of advertising. And then they're like, oh, and then Ryan's new thing will come on after that. And then the ratings come in, they're like, oh, the celebrity thing tanked. And then Ryan's show, like people scrolling through the channels just decided to stop and tune in.
Nice.
And you go, oh, well, I thought you guys wanted ratings because that's what I keep giving you every
Right.
time you hire me. I got one job that other people had before me, and then I became like the permanent host, and literally the ratings of the show doubled. And you
Wow.
go, great. So that should tell all of you in TV land that you put me on the TV and people stop and watch.
Yeah.
And they might not know me and they might not follow me on social media, but you're getting the numbers that you wanted to get.
Yep.
Doesn't that matter? And they go, no, but what are your social media numbers?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And
And
you
I don't
go, why do I have to go the long way to get back to where I was?
exactly, man. And I was literally just talking to a friend who's pretty high up about this kind of shit where we were just like, let's just agree, TV's still king. No matter what, all of this shit going on, if you can do well there with a in front of a camera, the whole thing. And like I've done a bunch of different stuff like that. I've been on NBC News, like as a comedian that they've called to talk about specific. So like I've got those relationships. No one gives a fuck. You know what I mean? Like I'll again with the social media shit. And it's like, I don't know why they think the engagement is worth it, but what I do wind up doing sometimes, and I feel like I've tried to trust people enough to say the thing that I'll do, and I feel like it insults them because it's their job. They got to defend their job. But like, I feel like a lot of this is like Truman Show. You ever see the Truman Show?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
this is my Truman Show comedy, like show business theory thing where. And I think you'd said something that alluded to it before, which is reminding me of it. But where you go, you stop at a street sign, cops everywhere, the whole place is on fire, no one's gonna let you pass. Give it a few weeks, you circle around or whatever, you come back, or like a few hours, and literally it's a different world. Nothing's that, whatever it is. And that is the way I've done a lot of stuff where I'll be like, okay, I'll give you an example of this thing, right? Dystopia. I never wanted to start a podcast in my life because I liked going on them. My friends had really good ones. People I thought were so amazing at doing this kind of thing. I was like,
Yeah.
I don't need to do it. It's not my thing. But pandemic hit. I had the title already trademarked. I had everything because I was pitching this as a show. This was, I was going out to LA to pitch Dystopia Tonight as a thing. And then, so then I was like, I got the name. Nobody's doing anything. It'll be fun. I did it live from Monday through Thursday, 8:30 every night, and then
Mhm.
whatever. But when I was starting to do it, I was asking people like, I'd like to talk to this person. I'd like to talk to that person, and they're like, you can't do that. You're just starting it. You got to start small. Just grab some of your friends. And I got a guy who's really fun. And I was like, no. It's like I don't want to do that shit. And
Yeah.
my manager at the time, and he was like he's such an old school. He was he's I still talk to him every day, but he was just kind of like, yeah, let's fucking see what happens. You know what I mean? He was always like, that was his attitude of like, I'd be like, hey man, I got some idea. It's kind of fucking crazy. I don't know if it's gonna work. And he goes, can't hurt to try, man. So,
Right.
but then that was it, and I wound up from the very get go getting like bigger names, and I was like, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna keep going for it. And then I was like, I want musicians on. Can we do that? And he was like, let's fucking see what happens. And I got bands I
Right.
loved and people I loved and whatever. So, but if you listen to, I try to say this and it doesn't seem to work because when that started happening, then the people who told me no, I couldn't get who they rep or whatever would go, how come you haven't asked to have so-and-so on? Oh, cause I fucking did. And you told me I wasn't,
Yeah.
whatever. So, but now they're like giving me their cell phone numbers. Whereas before I was like a pariah,
Right.
so I just
Right.
I'm like, but if you try to explain it that way,
So
they,
I think I really did get a good lesson and in how that side of it works.
Mhm.
And it came from a conversation kind of like this, where I was telling my therapist, I was like, I don't get it. Like there are these comedy clubs, they'll book me. All you have to do is just call them. You
yeah,
just pick up the phone and you say, "Hey, give Ryan Stout a week," and they go, "Great. What about this date?" "Okay, good." That's all you have to do,
Yeah.
and boom, you've made 10%. You
Yep.
could make 10 of those phone calls in an hour
Right.
and knock out, a good chunk of money.
Yep.
And I said, "I just don't understand, like, I'm paying these people a percentage, and they don't want to do the smallest thing to help me." And
Right.
my therapist smiled. He said, "Ryan, I've been a therapist in LA for 25 years, and every agent that sat on that couch, everyone has been the laziest person I've ever met." And I said, "What?" He said, "Oh, and not only are they lazy as an individual, then they go to work and they're surrounded by other agents who
Mhm.
are also just as lazy. And you have this culture of laziness
Mhm.
where for them, picking up the ringing phone and saying, 'Yeah, cool, I'll get my client to do it,' and making 10% of $2 million,
Right.
they get to do a victory lap, even though they did nothing other than answer the phone.
Right.
But if they have to hustle and grind and then make, 10 phone calls to make $20,000, it's like, nah, you did it wrong.
Well, yeah.
And when we talk about like social media numbers, the
Mhm.
only reason that managers and agents want those numbers to be high is so that when they call ABC and they go, "Oh, you should meet with my new client. I mean, they're really popular. These are their numbers."
Mhm.
It just makes that conversation easier.
Yeah.
You don't actually have to sell talent. You don't have to sell an idea.
Nope.
Even when you pitch a television show, you realize like, "Oh, I'm pitching to someone's assistant,
Mhm.
and then they're gonna have to go back and tell their boss about this."
Yeah.
So, if I'm just really good in the room and I'm able to articulate what the show is and make it fun and lively, they will probably screw that up when they take it to their boss. So
Right.
now what do we have to do? We have to shoot an entire pilot so that the assistant can forward the clip to the boss and be like, "Oh, I met with these people and this is a good idea."
Yep.
And then the boss sees it and goes, "Oh, good. I can sell this to the rest of the company."
Right. Yeah.
It's just the laziest way to do business possible, and they all wonder why they're struggling. And they
Absolutely.
all wonder why they have to switch jobs every 3 years to go to a new company. And it's like, "Oh,
Yep.
because you guys are grifting."
Yeah. Oh, exactly. And that's the kind of thing I'm sorry to say that I've slowly started to realize after having gone to, the guy that I was, who still helps me out every now and again, believe it or not. Like he's just a good dude. But when we were working together for like 10 years, he had worked with, this giant company in LA, worked under this dude for a long time who like repped, everybody like Norm Macdonald, like all those guys. So, my manager at the time was working right under him when he moved to LA when he was a kid. So that was it. That was his experience, was old school, like working for this dude, picking up phones, blah, blah, blah. But then we got to the point where, you get to that like point where just nothing's moving. But even he was like, if you can find, which is another good quality. If he's like, if you find somebody else you can move off to, do that shit because we're hitting, I've done all I can. Like this is it. And I was like,
Mm,
totally get it, man. That's awesome. Thought I found somebody, found out that
mhm.
they had a very specific, after I signed, which I'm a fucking idiot. But I did wind up getting at it. Like I put in like a 6 month thing or whatever. But um, they just very specifically can only do certain things. And I realized we had this conversation where I was just like, hey, can you just try not to think of me as a, and I was like, this is either going to go over well or be really shitty. But I was like, can you just not use me as a resource to pay your mortgage? And I said, because I think I have, I think I've done a lot of other shit and I think you're kind of missing it. And I know that the default is I'm going to go with this easy. They wanted me to do cruises, dude. You know what I mean? And I'm not even looking down on doing it, but
Right.
also like it would have taken
Not
me, yeah,
right. Not
yeah.
at this point in your career, you don't wanna do cruises.
Thank you, thank you. And I felt like it was an insult to say, you know what I mean? I was trying to be very diplomatic about it, but at one point I just had to be like, that ain't happening. So
Mm,
if this can't, but it is this thing of like, you're right. They don't want to have to do any of that stuff. And I'm like, I don't think I need it. Maybe I don't. Maybe I can just kind of, keep booking my own shit. And if I need a guy, I'll just call my guy and be like, hey, can you send
yeah.
that email? You know?
Well, and it's bled over into producers. Producers used to be able to look at talent, listen to an idea, and go, "Oh, I know how to put this idea into the box of
Yes.
television. I know how to do the work to do that.
Hmm.
And I know who to call to make that happen." And
Yep.
now producers are like, you know they listen to just whatever the pitch is, and then they go, "Okay, well, I mean, I get that it's a game show, but, like, do you know any like famous black women who can host it? Because if you could get that, then we can get meetings everywhere. And you
Yeah,
go, oh, so who are you again? Like you can't get in the door anywhere unless you have this one specific thing
yeah,
that I didn't come into the meeting with, because I'm trying to pitch you a game with like rules
yeah.
and contestants, and you're interested in a celebrity host that is a black woman
Hmm.
so that you can get the meeting, but you have no other way to get in.
Yeah,
And
man.
yeah, it
I
is.
love that you said that. I swear to God, if we talked all the time, I would have thought I told you this exact same story. I'm living in LA at the time. I've got a string of different network meetings. Same thing. I wrote a show, that they loved. They had me brought in the whole thing. Fucking dude says to me, would be great for this. He goes, "You're a little green, but what we could really use is like a Will Smith." And I
Mm,
said, yeah, if I had Will Smith attached to it, I would not
mm,
be here.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
let
yeah,
me
yeah.
just be honest. And like, obviously, it didn't, probably because I said that, it didn't go anywhere. But I was like, yeah, dude, get him. You know what I mean? Like, if that's like,
Sure,
can you just
sure.
give me whatever it works? But yeah, if we had a Will Smith, like, also like the audacity that, what am I fucking like? I would not have thought of that.
Right,
Like the idea of somebody more famous than me never crossed my mind.
right. Well,
I'm like, God
and
damn.
you hear stories all the time about, just some comic who's like kicking around
Yeah.
and isn't really doing anything that impressive, and can't really do anything for themselves. And then they make friends with, you know, whoever superstar celebrity person. And then they pitch their celebrity friend a TV show, and their friend goes, "Oh, yeah, we can get that made." And the next thing you know, they're sitting at ABC next to their celebrity friend, and now they're executive producing a series.
Yeah.
And they leapfrog all of us in comedy because they're friends with famous person. You go,
Yep.
but you still don't have 15 minutes of material. You still
Right.
can't like get up and do the thing. You didn't even come up with the idea for the show.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
let other people handle that. You just went along for the ride.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
and I realized what that's called in Hollywood. You describe somebody like that as being really smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
I'm
learned
getting
that
it.
over and over. Every single time somebody in the industry has gone, "Oh yeah, that person really smart."
Yeah.
It
Oh
makes me
yeah.
realize, oh, they make a lot of money and they have no talent. They're
Yes.
really
Absolutely.
smart.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay,
That bank
great.
account really counts for a lot.
That's what you mean.
Adds a
Yeah,
couple numbers to the IQ.
yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's crazy, man. I want to ask you, are you good to stay for a bit longer? Like, do you have anywhere to be or?
I mean, it's a school night, it's curfew, like, I have to. No, I'm an
I
adult,
figured.
I can hang out as long as I
Good.
want.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Because I want to keep you any longer because I know, but this is
I
I've
like that
so
in a
much.
dystopian, future, we still have, like, there's time constraints.
Yeah, you gotta hunt for mutated food, dude. I
It's
don't.
not just chaos in the dystopia. It's actually the opposite, we have a strict schedule.
If I really stuck to this name, I would just hang up on somebody in the middle of it and just put that out. That would have been great. That would have been a good
Anarchy
gimmick.
tonight. Yeah,
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 absolutely. But you were talking about we were talking about our careers and all that other stuff. I think we met, and I don't know because I know I think we met at Comedy and Magic, but I can't remember.
yeah.
I
No,
know
I'm
that.
pretty sure that's true, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
great,
yeah.
good. I thought that was what my memory of it was because yeah, I that was like a great. I love that club, and I remember having a great time there, and I remember you were fucking awesome. And everybody in the like, it's one of the few clubs that I feel like doesn't get enough. Because the Cellar has a lot of great talent. You know what I mean? And like they have famous people walk in. Comedy Store also that's that thing, but. Comedy Magic, man, the audiences are great. They know to expect comedy, and every person that hits that stage is fucking like golden. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's a mix of stuff. So I'm like, this is like, I don't know. It's because it's so far removed. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. Like, but
I
it's a
think there
great
is
club.
an element of it's been around for a long, long time. It's got a strong reputation. I also think it's that they've put a lot of effort into making the show better year after year after year. In
Right.
that, I've been to clubs where I do 4 shows and then I tell the manager like, "Hey, like 2 of the lights are out on stage." And he's like, "Really? Ah, all right, I got to see if we have bulbs because just so put upon to change a
Yeah.
light bulb." Whereas, every July, the Comedy Magic Club is like, what do comics need right now? Do you guys need like, should we upgrade our camera? Do you need like, should we get thumb drives so you can have better quality video? Like, what do you guys think we should do? And all of a sudden, when comics have better materials to show online, their audience grows and it's easier to
Yeah.
promote the shows, and they just, keep it going that way. But,
Yeah.
they have a lot of things going for them as far as food. I think being like out of the way does help because it limits the amount of like ruthless competition to get in there. You know what
Oh,
I
okay.
mean? Like there's not
Yeah.
comics lining the hallways just to hang out.
Right.
And
That's a
there's
good point.
no like uh at a lot of the most popular clubs, you have to compete for stage time in any way you can.
Yeah.
And comics have found like, well, I can offer the booker drugs. I can hang out and drink with the booker. I can
Yep.
make friends with this famous person and get in that way. Like there's a bunch of different avenues that have nothing to do with talent to get in. Whereas the
Yep.
Comedy Magic Club, it's like, well, if I have to drive down there and I have to follow Bobby Collins, I better
I better
I
bring your A
better
game.
have a strong 10 minutes to at least do up there. Like I
Yeah.
can't like talent is gonna be the key to stay here.
Yep. That's a good point. And I love that you said the Booker thing too, because I never got good at that. I never got good at, I never hung out with the club owner. I never tried to get anybody. I wasn't a drug guy, so I never got to like slip any of that shit. And I didn't really give a fuck about drinking like with the owners after I got offered to do that kind of stuff. I just thought it was like, I was 20 when I started. So I was also like, I want to go hang out with my fucking friend. I don't want to do this kind of shit. Like we're all in the city to get, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, so I just thought I did my set and then leave, and then I'd see people who were like okay at it,
yeah,
but then I'm like, oh, you spent the night on the Booker's couch. Like you guys are like fucking buddies, like
right, right.
and I just didn't want to do that.
Well, and a lot of those comics end up getting in at like one club,
Yep.
but then they don't really have a lot of options otherwise.
Right. Right.
And
Absolutely.
so what's weird is my style of competing for stage time was like, oh, I'm going to be really crisp and sharp and going to be on time. I'm going to have things that, if you look me up on the internet, it's going to be clear and professional. It's not going
Right.
to be me like taking my dick out on Instagram or anything like that.
Oh, fair.
Um, and you find out that even when you get booked at a club on the road and you have to be up at 6 a.m. to go to morning radio, like there are
Yeah.
comics that sleep through it. Some
Oh, yeah.
don't show up at all. And I was always like sharp and on time for everything. And I was like,
Mhm.
great, by being like easy for everything,
Yeah.
the booker will remember that. And that was true for a few years. And then they just kind of went, nah.
Yeah. I
I
remember
almost
doing.
didn't stand out in their mind because there were no horror stories about me. Yeah.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean, man. Which can also sometimes be pretty good because I feel like if they don't have too much of a recollection, you can kind of put in a seed. You know what I
Mm,
mean? And be
yeah.
like, oh, you don't. We had fun, and I was always whatever. And then they don't know, so
Yeah.
they're like
Right.
whatever. And then as long as you're good, that's the only thing, man. I always tell people, even like younger comics that I know now too, and I'm like, just fucking get good. And then if you get good, like once you get in the door of a thing, like that's why I never had any problems like especially with like this kind of stuff. I think I would have been super awkward if I didn't know I had the talent at this point to back it up when I did, when I was interviewing people. Because I directly called like, if my manager gave me a number to somebody, he'd be like, "Hey, I don't have this, but I've got Ed Azer's number and he wants you to call him." I'm like, "Cool, I'm gonna call it." Because like says no, but at least it's a good phone call. And if anybody was ever like, "I want to see your stand up," what like actually was funny was Dave Thomas from SCTV. I had him on as a guest. He wanted to, and he was like, "Have him send me a thing. I'd really love to see what he does." And I felt that was another point where I was like, I just felt great about going like, "Yeah, man, I'll send you an hour. It's fine by
Yeah.
me." And he loved it. Came on, had a good time. But if
Yeah.
I would feel really shitty, and there were points where like I think people wanted me to do. Like I think they thought if you didn't have the confidence, you probably weren't worth it. But I was also like, I'm not good enough to do this thing right now because if I do it, I'm gonna suck. And all
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
people, my opportunity is gonna, and not that like I like, you know what I mean? When you just kind of know where you are, where you're like, I don't belong, doing this particular thing right now. I want them to see me when I'm really good, and
Hmm.
then so maybe it'll come back around again. But
Hmm.
I mean, it doesn't often happen that way, so it's just weird.
Yeah. Well, and you find out that a lot of people can't recognize really good. What they really just recognize is polish and what they like. and that's
Yes.
really it. And
Yep.
so, then the motivation to get really good or stay really good or write a really good new bit, you realize that's all like internal stuff and has
Yeah.
nothing to do with the rest of the world. And that can be, that could be a midlife crisis. It's easy way to spin off when you're a stand-up comic your entire life. You said you started at 20, I started at
Yeah.
18. Like you
Oh,
put that much time in and you kind of go like, oh, look at that.
yeah.
I'm 38. I'm 39. I'm
Yep.
40. Mm. Turns out these really great bits only make people go, yeah, but what else?
Yeah. 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 Exactly. Yeah.
Um, and it makes the industry go like, yeah, but how do we make money off of that?
Right.
And
Oh
you go,
man.
oh, I'm not worth anything to you as a talent.
Right.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep. I
Um,
one of those conversations too where somebody was literally like, but where is the money? And I was like, I felt like I was being shook down, but I understood, but I was like, because I didn't have a fucking answer.
yeah,
Like, and I was like, this is horrifying and brutal. Like, I needed a couple days to recover from that conversation because it was like, I don't know how to help you because I don't know where the money is. And I was just like,
right.
and then one hand, I want to, if I had the balls at the time, I probably would have been like, but isn't that your job to figure out like
Yeah.
where I do this thing and then
You do
fucking,
the business side of it, which is finding the money. Like,
yeah,
what is the business side if you already know?
right.
um,
Yes.
well, and it was interesting too to digress to that idea that I was already like getting on camera, doing a lot of
Yeah.
hosting. I was like, well, that's where the money is, and that's why management companies and agencies were interested in me because I
Hmm.
could do that because I could go on a show like Chelsea Lately, do the panel,
Yeah.
and still get invited back 50 times. They're like,
I
great,
agree.
that's
Chelsea
another
lately.
thing that he can do. But
Yep.
all of a sudden, once the business shifted a little bit and all of a sudden it was my resume and my ability
Hmm.
did not matter because they were like, yeah, we're not really taking white guys.
Right.
I was like, oh well, that's it's kind of weird you because that guy over there, that guy's a
Yep.
white guy, but
Right.
he can't read a teleprompter and has never done a game show before and
Yeah.
doesn't really have the ability to like get ratings, whereas I'm kind of a proven thing. So
Yep.
we're at different levels of talent, but
Yep.
you're just saying that you don't want both of us.
Right.
Um, this isn't offensive as far as any racial thing goes. What's
Right.
offensive is that you're telling me that I'm the same as that untalented white guy because we're both white guys. Like, what? How
Yep.
dare you?
What?
And so all of a sudden, it was impossible to. I mean, literally no one was calling because they wanted me to host anything.
Right.
And I was like, I think probably one of the last things I did was this thing for uh, a little company that was owned by America Online, and they wanted to do just this quick little like weekly kind of it was like a clip show type thing, kind of we'll say Tosh.0 like, where there's a clip and you tell a joke and clip and whatever else, and they were the head of the company called me into his office after like the first 16 episodes. He was like, we've never gotten so many views on anything we've produced.
Wow.
Like literally your videos get 2 to 3 times as many views as all of the other things we've ever created. And he was like, you don't happen to like look at the Facebook page, do you? And I go, no, why would I do that? He was like, oh,
Right.
because people are pretty mean on the Facebook page. I was like, yeah, that's why I don't look at it.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
was like, so you're
Exactly.
not concerned at all about what the public, like their response to this? I'm like, you're paying me to come in and read a teleprompter once a week. And as
Yeah.
long as I get people to watch your little clip show, you're happy, right? The advertiser's
Mhm.
happy. I'm happy. What do I give a shit about Facebook? And this
Yeah.
guy
Fuck it.
had a nice laugh. He was like, oh, you're right. This is great. And then
That's awesome.
all of a sudden, it was like those jobs just disappeared too because they were like, yeah, the advertisers don't want a white guy. And you
Yeah. Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
"Uh, okay, I'm not advertising to you as a white guy. I'm
No.
saying, do you want views and ratings? Because I'll show up and give you those.
Right. Which is a shame because it's not. I mean, I understand like everything that's going on and what the thing is and with acting and all that other shit and the representation and yada yada yada. But that's not necessarily equality. And I know a bunch of people who would say the same thing who aren't white. They're like, yeah, I really hate, I have close friends who, will tell me stories about that kind of shit where they're like, they've known somebody for 20 years, but then all of a sudden this thing came up and they're like, I thought of you because you were Asian. And they're like, fuck, like that kind of hurts because, I've known you longer than that. And I would just hope you would recognize me for what I was doing. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like, and I feel like that's a thing that you can't really either mention. The craziest thing too, though, is, the different worlds of show business too. So like if I'm doing, if I've got like, my the acting agent or whatever the hell it is, they'll literally say, hey man, they're looking for a dude who looks irate, who can play, like, you got darks, you can tan, you got darks, whatever, and they want that kind of look. And I'm like, great, could you call the guy who said they don't need any more white Italians on the thing, because you need to talk, because you think I
right,
look like I can hijack this plane, and this guy won't book me because I'm not the right, you know what I mean?
right,
So
right,
it's
right.
the weirdest fucking,
Yeah, yeah,
juxtaposition
yeah,
there.
yeah. And by the I can't hide the fact that I'm straight white guy. Like
Yeah.
that is but it is weird to think that like that is uh yeah, it's weird to think like how 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 do you want me to compete in this
Yeah.
environment given my
Right.
resume? I
Right.
That's all I want to know. How would you like me to compete? Because
Sure.
if I'm not even allowed to audition, I'm kind of like, oh well, this is a huh.
Right.
That's
So
that's not a quality that I stay home.
no, yeah, that doesn't work out for me. So when you were 18, you were starting to do stand up and stuff, because you've had, like, I've Googled you. You do have like all of these like career highlights, man, and whatever. Do you have one in particular? Like, so you're 18 and you're doing stand up. How long between starting that and getting, a TV gig? And did you have one in particular that you were like, oh, this is going to be my break? You know what I mean? This is what's going to get me out
Mm,
there. And
yeah.
like, what? Because 18's young. I always think, I know I started at 20, and people will be like, "That's great, you started young." I'm always like, I wish I started younger for some reason. But you
Mhm.
were 18. Do you have that kind of feeling too? Like should have been doing it when I was 15. You know what I mean? Like, is that?
I mean, I was hyper aware of kids who would come along and start off and I'd be like 19, 20 years old and then this
Mhm.
12-year-old would show up at an open mic and do like, an open mic or two and then disappear. And of course, because the 12-year-old has school, you
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
understand. Like kid can't go out, 7 nights a week doing
right,
open mics with adults. Um,
yeah,
but then all of a sudden you realize like because that kid has done a little bit of stand up and has a little bit of confidence, next thing you know, that kid has a Disney show. And you go,
right,
"Oh, okay, that's interesting."
right,
There's never any downside to starting super young.
right.
There's a bunch of opportunities that come up, but I do like now when I sit down to write material, I kind of smile and I go, "Ah, remember writing material when you were new and you were 18 and you had nothing to say about anything because
Right.
really you hadn't really learned anything."
Yep.
um and now you realize like, oh, I can kind of say this thing and have a point and I can add punchlines here. You can craft a piece. um but to your question, like the one thing that happened was I was 18, I was doing just trying to get on stage at least 300 times per year. That was the goal,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
when I was 22, I became the house MC at Cobb's Comedy Club in San
Nice.
Francisco. And I also managed to get invited to the Boston Comedy Festival. And
Oh
then at
shit.
22, I went to the Boston Comedy Festival and they had their $10,000 stand-up comedy competition and I won. And
Nice.
so
Yep.
when you're 22 and you win a contest like that, the phone starts ringing. So
Nice.
like that happened in September. By October, I auditioned for HBO. By November, I was doing the HBO Festival in Vegas. The next
Wow.
April, I was in Aspen at the US Comedy Arts Festival. The previous December, I had meetings with all the big networks. I had management. Uh, and I remember like moving to LA, like I won in September and then that was 2005. I moved to LA in February '06, and
Okay.
then I met people who were like, "Oh, you're with these representatives. You've got this banner next to you. Like, if you don't book a pilot in the first 6 months, they're going to drop you, right?" And I was like, "Oh, you think so? Because I don't think that's going to happen." And you know what? I booked a pilot in the first 6 months, so I'll never get to know if that was true or
Right.
not. But,
Wow.
it is one of those things that after I booked that first pilot and I was kinda strung along and told like, "Oh, this is a blinking green light, this is
Hmm.
gonna be good," and then it didn't go, but
Right.
then MTV gave me another thing, and it was the remake, they were gonna bring back Singled Out. And so I remember calling Chris Hardwick, who I knew from stand up, being like, "Hey, buddy, I think I just got offered your old job." And it was very nice that he was like celebratory. He was like, "Oh, I'm so
Yeah,
glad that's going to somebody that I like." And then we
that's
did
awesome.
that, and the president of the network changed, and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to take the network back in time." And so that
Wow.
project went away. But then it was like, "But maybe Ryan wants to do this other thing." And then it was just like project after project. And I just spent the whole time going, "Well, something's going to click."
Sure.
And then nothing did.
Fuck.
And I just kept kind of booking jobs here and there. And yeah, I am very jealous of a lot of the comics who they literally get like one job and then they get known for that thing,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely, man.
Like, "Oh, you're that drunk guy from that. Oh, we love you.
Right.
We love you
What was
now and 20 years from now. You're the
Yeah,
best."
exactly. You're fucking solid. Nothing you can do no wrong. That special wasn't so good, you'll do another one.
Yeah.
They'll be We're riding with you. But those are the true fans. That's what I love about shit where like, today when somebody writes something about a comedy show or whatever, they'll be like, fans walked out of Wanda Sykes' show at the No, they didn't. The fans stayed. Those people were not fans. They didn't
Right.
fucking walk out. Those
Right,
people,
right, right. Yeah.
um so wait, so when you were 22, do you remember like how much material did you have at that point?
Well, I do remember specifically, like, when, after I won the festival, I knew
Yeah.
I had a feeling somebody would call, even if it was just
Mhm.
one person, and if they called, I would need to send something. And so I
Yeah.
remember putting together packets of, like, a headshot and a resume and a DVD, and the DVD
Nice.
was, like, a 20-minute set, which was not, had controversial material on it, but it didn't include any profanity. So that
Oh,
was, like, a
great.
big deal for me to be like, "Oh, and this is a clean tape."
Yeah.
And,
Good.
and when I moved to LA and people were like, you know, I was new and fresh and everybody wanted to like sniff my butt and be like, "Who are you? Where'd you come from?" Um, there were sleazy comics hanging around who had been hanging around for a lot of years who had not gotten a break. And they're like, "Oh, who are you? Where are you from? Hey, could you maybe tell your manager about me?" And I'm so glad I had the wherewithal to tell them like, "Sure, man, I just need a 20-minute clean tape."
Nice.
And they'd be like, "What? Well, why does it have to be 20 minutes?" I go, "That's what I gave them. I gave them 20 minutes clean, and I'm told that was good because then they can put me out on the road opening for like, Julio Iglesias or whoever. Like that's
Yeah,
just an
smart.
option. It's just an option. Like there's no way to make money off of me, so
Mhm.
they have to put me in front of somebody who's making money." And I remember
Right.
all of these comics who were, a decade older than I was, kind of go, "Oh, all right." Yeah, no, no, I'll get you that tape. Not one of them ever
Never.
got me a tape. Not one.
Right. Right.
And you just go, "Great, great."
That's
Um,
smart.
but, yeah, it's just funny. You look back on a career of successes and mistakes, and you kinda go, "Yeah, maybe given the circumstances, given what I had, I knocked it out of the park. Maybe I
Yeah.
made terrible errors. Maybe I pissed somebody off." Like, and I kinda settle into that idea of like, "Well, I'm never gonna know."
No, yeah, and you'll drive yourself fucking crazy. I mean, I remember being on the road with guys who would be like so bitter or like driving themselves crazy about shit that happened. Like no matter how many times I saw them, they'd still be talking about it, and I just would be like, I cannot be that. Like if I start to feel like that, I gotta either correct it or dip the fuck out because I
Yeah.
can't. I won't live my life like that.
So my
Um,
favorite lesson about that was,
mhm,
I worked with this guy who I'd never heard of him before, and he gets on stage and he just
mm,
crushes. And he's standing at the door afterward and he's selling his CD. And I watch him the next night and he just destroys. And he's selling his CD afterward, and he's doing the exact same word for word kind of chunk every night. And it's
right.
2008, I believe. And I
Hmm.
look at the CD and I look at the back of it. It was recorded in 1999. And I'm looking at the track list, and it's exactly what he's doing on stage.
Wow.
And I kind of, very kind of casually like, when do you like do new stuff?" Like,
Hmm.
do you like to insert that in the middle? Like, there are a lot of guys that go up and just, like, start with new stuff. Like, well, how do you like to do it?
Yeah.
And I remember this guy being so bitter, and he was like, "Well, I'm killing, and so, like, if I'm already killing with this stuff and I'm not getting famous, like, what do they want from me?
Hmm.
I can't kill harder than that." And I'm
Right.
like, oh, so you're
Wow.
just gonna keep doing that over and over because it kills?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you're gonna be drinking a lot after the show.
Yeah.
Every show. And,
You kind of wonder how they wrote it in the first place because you're like, did you actually like? There's so many times I've seen a comic or a guy like that who's been doing it for like 3 decades, and I'm like, I don't see you writing this shit, man. Like, who? Where did you get? You know what I mean? We're like, some of these things have been in the ether for a long time. Am I remembering it from something else? Not even to say that it's been lifted necessarily, which we all know. Guys who've been there forever who've done that kind of shit too. But like the fact that they can't write a new joke, something new, nothing's coming in your head. You're like, how did you even sit down in the first place to put this shit together?
and I think the motivation early on, like, artistically, they were like, "You know what? I wanna kill, and I wanna get better, and I wanna get" and then once they were killing, they were like,
Yeah.
"Well, this isn't what I thought it was. So what the fuck did I just do with my life?" And you go, oh no. Oh,
Yeah.
no. Oh, no, that's not what this is."
Yep.
I
Yeah.
remember distinctly having a lot of, like, comedy albums as a kid, like CDs, and I
Hmm.
remember, like,
Me
some of
too.
my favorite artists, you'd have when you had the book of CDs and there'd be, like, 4 for every page, and I
Hmm.
remember, like, looking at somebody's discography being like, "That's cool to have, like, a whole
Yeah.
page of CDs of just your stuff."
Yeah.
I hope I have 4 CDs. And I knew
I
full well that, like, Chris Rock at the time only had 3, and Steve Martin only had 3 and then, like, a banjo album, and, like, I was
right.
like, "I think I wanna have 4. I
Yeah.
wanna do that." So it was never about, like, get up and crush. It was like, "Oh, even if you're crushing, you've got albums to write."
Right, that's smart though. That's a good way to look at it. But what do you think of like the special thing today, man? Where like I don't blame anybody for putting out, you know, a special, whatever. Like, cause I always think it's funny how like guys like who are really big, who are making like fucking hand over fist money wise, right? You know what I mean? They're just making millions of dollars. We'll still have something shitty to say about anybody putting out a special on Amazon Prime or whatever it is. And I'm like, dude, what do you want them to fucking, you know what I mean? You should at least be, lifting
Right.
them up in some way because you're fucking done. You made it. You don't, doing stadiums and shit. But on the other hand, too, I find it interesting that like, it was considered a special back in the day because HBO had the HD camera. You know what I mean? Like you didn't have they had the thing to make it look cool, but now
Right.
everybody's got it. So of course
Right,
the
right, right,
market's
right.
flooded with that kind of shit. So, you know, I don't know. Do you still feel like if you were to do you think it's more of an internal thing? Like if you were to put something out, you'd be like, "This is for me for the CD album." You know what I mean? To have that kind of thing, or
I still think, yeah, a lot of the motivation is internal for me
right?
because ultimately it's a weird game to play where we know people who they release something on Amazon Prime and they get 1,000,000 views and then it does nothing for their career, and you
Yeah,
go, "Ah," because you could have
yeah,
put it out on Netflix and only 35,000 people would have watched and you would be a superstar.
yep,
Like, how does that work?
right,
The idea that platform is king is crazy.
yeah,
Um I really enjoy the fact that, like, Joe List will put out, he's really
great,
focused on being prolific, and
yep,
he's really upfront about the idea that, like, yeah, nobody wants this. Nobody
yeah,
wants an hour, they want a quick little, something on Instagram. They want a
yeah, yeah,
viral 1 minute. They don't wanna watch an hour, and you kinda go, "Oh, this thing that we're trying to create requires an audience," and the culture shifted so that there really is no audience. And I kind of think of it as like, okay, well, now we're kind of all doing origami. Like,
yeah,
that's what we're getting good at. We're really good at
right,
folding the paper, and it has to be that kind of activity where
right,
we settle in and we do it to do it,
yeah,
and we celebrate each other. And, you
yeah,
know, ultimately, those have been the best moments where a comic you respect goes like, "That joke was very funny." And you
yep,
kinda go, "Oh, thank God. Thank
right,
God I'm
yeah,
onto something." And it's not
yeah,
even like
exactly,
walking around, like, with your chin held high, like, "Yeah, I'm God's gift to comedy." It's
yeah,
just
no,
like, "Okay, we gotta win. Alright, that's all I needed to
yes,
hear. I just needed that one little one."
one
Uh,
100%, man, and nobody else understands that. I feel like, but us, because you can't. It's not something you can share with a friend. It's not something you can be like, "Hey." You know who liked my clip today that I posted on a thing? A comedian I respect. They'll be like, all
Yeah.
right,
Yeah, yeah,
and you're
yeah.
like, no, that's gonna keep me going for a bit there because I really hesitate. Like, I'm one of those people who like I'll put something, go to post something, but I will agonize over like the thing. Doesn't matter if there's laughs in the background. Doesn't matter if I know the joke, whatever it is. I'll just go, God. I hate it. I hate me. I don't know what this is gonna do. And then you put it out, and then when you get like a comedy or somebody, even like any of the musicians that follow me now that they like the stand up thing, I'm like, that's pretty fucking cool. All right, that was worth it. That was worth putting
Yeah,
out.
yeah, yeah, that's
That's all
fun,
it
that's fun.
takes.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
like,
yeah.
that's all right, cool, cool, cool. I'm like, I'm glad I posted that because I took me 3 hours to just fucking hit the button, but yeah,
Uh-huh. Yeah, I was
yeah,
really worried about that. And
yeah,
it's one of those things, like, when you really do break it down and you realize, like, hey, there's a lot of poets out there, and there's a lot of painters out there, and there's a lot of modern dancers out there, and
yeah,
they don't get any, like, fame or money for what they do,
right.
but they go out and they work hard at it, and they end up, like, inspiring other people, and they
Hmm.
do it every day. Why can't I do it every day just with this? And
Yeah,
you just kinda go, "Oh, well, this will be my little slot in life." And I will say that it's really uplifting that, um I've always been very good about, being aware, kind of what we were talking about earlier, that people have been the general public is very willing to say bad things about stand-up comics.
yep,
Generally willing to just stereotype us. My wife had
sure.
a she was doing a book club where, apropos of almost nothing, one member of the book club, she was like, you've got all these like white stand-up comedians that basically they just get paid to get on stage and say racist stuff. And
Holy
my wife is
fuck.
like, huh, because I know a lot of white comedians. My husband's a white comedian. He doesn't. I know a
Right,
lot of them that are very clean that don't say any racist things. Like, where did this
right.
stereotype even come from, other than your
Yeah.
imagination? So, because there's so much negativity like heaped onto comics,
Hmm.
I'm very careful publicly not to speak badly about comics.
Yeah, same.
And
Yeah.
I'm very careful also in private to like reach out to people and not just like their little video or, comment on it, but to like send an email or make a phone call and be like, "Hey, I saw that thing you did. That was very funny. I
Yes.
really like this thing about it. I really like that thing about it." And
Yeah.
just trying to spread that positivity a little bit.
Hmm.
I've been really kind of delighted because I don't remember doing all of it. I just
Yeah,
remember
man.
being in the practice of it. And then, like, I was walking into the comedy store here in LA, and the door guy was like, "Oh, you're Ryan Stout. You may not remember this, but there was this show this one time, and you hung out afterward, and there were a lot of young comics, and you talked to us, and you answered our questions, and it was really nice of you, and I really think it helped a lot." And I just go, amazing. I don't exactly remember doing that, but that does sound like something I would do. So
Yeah.
I'm so glad now to see you in LA and
Yeah.
continuing the thing. And I'm glad that had any kind of effect on you that was positive.
Yep.
But the number of times that somebody's like pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I want you to know you said this thing to me and it caused this thing, and then I got this other thing because of it." I'm always like, "I said that? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right." So I'm trying to incorporate that into the origami of all of it. Like, yeah, we do
Yeah,
our
man.
little things, but also we have community and we just try to uplift each other a little bit and celebrate each other's successes because we might not have our own.
Yeah, dude, 100%, man. And like, you know, I love that kind of thing because it I remember being younger and I remember that kind of shit meaning something to me. And I remember, Jessica Kirsten was like super nice to me when I was younger. And I got to tell her that when we did during in the middle of the pandemic, because we'd kept in touch and when we'd see each other, she was always like, hugging or whatever. And then
And
we'd be
she
like, oh
was
my
always
God, how
like,
you
"I
doing?
hated you, John.
Right,
Jesus."
yeah, yeah. She was like, "Fucking A, man, the hair." Uh but like she, we did this benefit thing and I got to just tell her, I'm like, "Hey man, you took me aside when I was like barely it was me and a couple other friends and we had put on a show like the Muppets. We were like, we're gonna get industry to come out and see us." And then, we did. We put this whole thing together at Gotham, but we asked Jess to headline it. We're like, could you come out? Because that's going to be the great draw. She's like, yeah, absolutely. I don't care. And then I didn't know a couple people that were on it. And this one girl that went on it didn't really have much of an act, but she's explosive. She's the cartwheels, like the whole fucking thing. And I was going to go on next. And I think Jess had seen me. And I was just like, what? I was like, I got fucking, they're hooting, hollering, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And I don't know. She just came out to me and she was like, "All right, look at me. She's got nothing. Okay." Like just totally like just do your thing, ride the energy out, whatever.
Yeah.
I did it, and then I got back and got done. And I'm very much like I have my material, but I like to, especially when I was younger, I would talk, through my set. If something didn't work out, whatever I was feeling or thinking at the time, I would just do these little ad libs in between of getting to jokes or acknowledging the audience. So Jess saw that and she's like, "Hey, I'm just gonna let you know they love you and they like that you do that, and you're gonna get a lot of people that tell you not to do it. Don't listen to them." And I didn't know what she meant because I just didn't, I was like, "Oh, wow, okay." She was 100% right because
Yeah,
that's what
yeah, yeah.
she's, that's who she is and that's what she's very good at. But I remember I thought about that every time I went on stage somewhere at a club where some headliner or somebody just be like, "Dude, don't do that. Just do your shitty little jokes, and don't fucking." I'd be like, "God, that sucks." And I'm like, "Oh, now I know why they can't," or whatever the deal is. And I'm an MC, and I knew the difference between emceeing where you got to support the show, but it was
Mhm.
still like club owners would just be like, "Don't try something." I'd be like, "Fuck,
Right.
that sucks," or they'd be like, "You're not so and so," and I'd be like, "Well, what if I, could get good at, and I don't want to be that person, but what
Yeah.
if I'm like good at doing a thing?"
Yeah.
Um, yeah, man,
There was
it's
I got to hear a story about that from a club owner talking to another comic about me, and this
oh
comic
wow,
was young and kind of new, and, the club owner was really just trying to help this person out, and, this person also had, like, a little celebrity to them already. They were already doing stuff on television, but they were really struggling, like, they were just starting off as doing stand up. So they were like
sure,
emceeing a bunch. And
Mhm.
when you're the MC and you've already got TV credits and you get to go and have brunch with the club owners, like it's kind of a different game. But the club
Yeah,
owners, like, you got to decide like how you're going to be on stage. Like, are you out there as an entertainer? Are
hmm
you looking to appease them and like lift up the room? He was like, you're working with Ryan this week. Watch Ryan on stage. Ryan doesn't give a fuck about any of those people. Ryan's going to give his material that he knows is his, and they
hmm
get to choose whether they like it. But if somebody doesn't like it, Ryan's going to be like, well, here's another one that's
yeah,
very similar to the last one you didn't like. He's
right,
not going to try to like necessarily pander in any way. And
hmm
he said, so you have to, and he said it very nicely. He wasn't like bad mouthing me. He was like, because
right,
Ryan will steamroll them enough that he'll win them over and they'll get it and they'll be like, oh, this
yeah,
is what he's doing. He said, so you could be like an entertainer out there, or I mean, if you want to be an artist like Ryan, you could try to do that. And I was like,
right,
that's it's an it's a nice thing for him to say to an artist. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
you kind of made it sound like I was a little pigheaded, but that's okay. Art, sure.
Yeah,
But uh, it was funny because then I asked the comic. I said, "What do you want to do?" Because the comic was the one that told me the story, and the comic goes, "I want to be the Britney Spears of comedy." And I went,
right.
"Do that.
Yeah,
Do that." And now that guy's
right.
much, much more famous than I am,
Oh,
and it lights up rooms and sells tickets and,
yeah,
and good for him because
right,
I remember what I told him. I said, "Whatever choice you make, you can't flip-flop. You
right.
can't go down this entertainment pandering path and then come back later and be like, 'Oh, I'm gonna be an artist.' And if you're gonna
Yeah,
be
yeah.
a stuck-up artist, don't get up there and talk about your dog."
Right, right, right. Yeah, exactly.
I
And,
say that
like,
as a guy now who talks about his dog on
talks about
stage
his
all the
dog.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, like, that's the other thing too, man, is, like, I think when I was younger, I learned, because now anybody that opens for me or any of the MCs, I can tell that they've worked with a certain type of comic where they'll come up to you and go like, "Hey, like, is there anything you don't want me to say? Anything you don't want me to do?" And I'd be like, "Just fuck it. Just as long as you're having a good time." If I'm closing out this show, if I'm headlining this show and I can't do it because the two people that comics I got, then I don't belong doing it. And like, because I had such
Yeah.
a bad experience with like guys before that were like, "You better not say the same word I'm about to say or whatever it
Yeah.
is." And you're just like, God, that makes it so much less fun. But I worked with dudes who were a blast. And they were like, if you're having fun, they're having fun, then I'm having fun. The energy's up. And those are the ones
Yeah.
you emulate and like, as long as everybody's just having a good time, like who gives a fuck? Like
I
I like
often
when I see
wonder I agree with that, and I often wonder if it was a mistake that I actually made, which was I would go out on the road
oh,
and I would have these acts in front of me,
Yeah.
and I thought it was my responsibility to follow whoever they put in front of me. And that's just
Mm.
how it was. I had to
Right.
prove my talent.
Right.
And some weeks it was very, very hard.
Right.
And then I
Right.
would watch other comics where they would not tour at all unless they got to bring their hand-chosen opening act,
Right.
and they learn how to follow that act,
Sure.
and guess what? The audience loves it, and then that headliner becomes a superstar, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
go,
That.
"Ah, maybe that was just like an entertainment, strategy." I
Right.
don't think it has anything to do with being a better comic.
Interesting. No.
But I
No.
do
Right.
think the outcome of it certainly benefits you because you're
Yeah.
never gonna be in a struggling situation. Uh,
Sure. Especially if you
yeah,
know they're great. Like I love going out. Like there'll be a few people like that I've had, come out and open if they want to do it, if somebody asks me to do it, if I can go out on the road or whatever. But like I like going out with my friends. Like I go like going out with, they're a strong comic and they're a good act. But I don't know if you're the same way too, is like if you're in the middle of nowhere and you're doing a show or whatever it is, and if they're having a hard time, like I just go like do whatever you want to do. You know what I mean? Like if people are giving you shit, just fucking give it back and then we'll deal with it later. Like in my mind, whenever I would go somewhere, I would go, this might be the last time I come back to this place. Whereas
yeah,
I know like when I would work with guys before, they needed it. You know what I mean? And not that I didn't, but I was just like, if it's a good couple and I want to come back, I'll fucking come back. It's not something on my route that I'm like eager to. And I think that attitude also, we didn't have any incredibly terrible things. 9 times out of 10, it was me at the end, in the middle of Michigan where somebody wanted to fucking, threaten my life, or whatever, because I did something they didn't agree with, you know what I mean? And they
mhm.
started and, but I would be like, yeah, just do whatever. What could happen? It could be really fun. Like we'll have a story at the end of it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The clubs
I
aren't
am
making us
surprised.
famous.
I am surprised at the limited number of altercations that I've had. For as dead set as I was on stage and for as, like,
Right.
kinda condescending at times,
Yeah.
but I also think when you wear a suit and tie, they allow for that a little bit, like, "Oh, it's a performance."
And you're
Um,
tall, right?
yeah, I'm pretty tall. I'm
Yeah, you're tall. I remember you being a tall guy.
I'm
I'm pocket
6'1".
sized.
I
Oh
remember.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah. You could. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
You could crane grab me and bring me wherever you wanted.
Yeah. Um, but that's not to say I didn't have any altercations, and I was just
Right.
always surprised that, like, "Oh, you're this angry at at jokes at the adult nightclub.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
alright." And then I have to remember that they came from a culture where they're angry about jokes in the news every single day, and I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you were just raised wrong. I don't
Right.
okay."
Yep.
Um, uh, and I do believe that has been kind of the hardest realization, which is I think for a lot of people when they watch stand-up comedy, there's this kind of feeling like, "Oh, everyone in the audience is like me, or at
Yeah.
least they should be like me. I'm the
Right.
one watching the comedian, and I have a good sense of humor, so I will decide if the comedian's funny, and when I decide this is funny and I look around and other people are laughing, I'm like, 'Oh, these people are just like me.'" And
Yeah.
the audience can really fool themselves into believing that, like, "Oh, well, if the audience is like me, I must be a good judge of comedy." And
Right.
when they get into those situations where they don't like somebody and the audience is laughing, like, their whole world starts to unravel.
Yeah.
And you go, if the audience had more education about just little bits of comedy.
Hmm.
I've always given the example of, like, I think it was probably 6th grade, I had to stand up in front of the class and read a poem that I wrote,
Uh-huh.
and every kid had to do it, and we
Right.
all hated it. And from that point on, we were all like, "Yeah, poetry's kinda tough.
Yeah.
I don't really get it. It's a mystery to me. I'm not gonna badmouth it because it's hard. It's
Yeah.
nerve-wracking. I don't know." And then you had to do it again in 7th grade and 8th grade and 9th grade, and you're like, "Why are we doing this? This is torture." But
Right.
nobody's walking around bad-mouthing poets. Like, if
No.
somebody had to get up and do 5 minutes of stand-up as a 6th grader, and then as a 7th grader, and then as an 8th grader, and they just hated it, they'd
Yeah.
talk so far less shit about stand-up comics in general because 'cause they'd be like, "It's hard, I don't know, it's a
Yeah.
thing, I don't get it."
Right. And they would treat us like we actually have PhDs in what we do for as long as we've been doing it because like the amount of times I've had an argument where I'm just like, I understand that you like where somebody doesn't want to say, I personally do not find that funny. They'll just say, this isn't funny. And I kind of
Yeah.
gotta go, but it's got all the parts, man. It's got all the everything. The rhythm is there, the
Yeah.
structure is there. That's a solid thing. You can not find it, but no, it's just not funny. All right. Well, if you want to
Okay.
be
Yeah.
that way,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
You'll have a
Well, and
lot easier time if you just say it's not for you.
it doesn't help that um yeah, because the people are willing to do that when they walk into a live music, a bar. It says
Yes.
live music. You walk in, it's reggae. They go, "Ah, this isn't for me." They don't go, "This band sucks." They go,
Yeah.
"Ah, it's not my thing."
Yeah.
But with stand up, they very much go, "Oh, not funny." And it's related to that idea. They really do think of themselves as the audience. The
Yeah.
audience. There's no other audience out there.
Yeah.
And um yeah, I really, really wish there was a better definition of sense of humor, because you look
Yeah.
up sense of humor in the dictionary, it's like feeling out the humor. Okay, well, thank you for that. That's really nice. That's really helpful. But, you know, the idea that people aren't given a definition of sense of humor, and they're
Right.
also told that it's wildly important all the time. So if you don't
Yeah.
have a sense of humor, you're a real piece of shit. Where it's like,
Right.
no, no, that's not how that works either. Like you can have a bad sense of direction, you can have a bad
Yeah.
sense of coordination, you could be bad at math, you could be bad at all
Yeah.
sorts of things and still be a lovely person. There's no
Right.
requirement. Your sense of humor says nothing about your quality as a human being. So don't use
Right.
that as a cudgel to attack comedians,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly.
because there are a lot of humorless people who they literally don't get comedy and then want to attack comics.
Yeah, you're not a bad but that's the thing people use as a check mark for like finding someone to spend the rest of their lives with. Everybody I know who's with somebody, especially when it's getting close and then everybody's getting a little older and you got to pair up. I'm like, wow, you found somebody with a good sense of humor, good look, all this other shit. How'd you do
Yeah,
that at the last fucking minute? And
yeah,
and then you meet them and they don't have that. And I'm like, oh, because you need it. It's set, the
yeah,
society says they got to have this shit.
yeah,
So they just do it. And then,
yeah,
like even like the thing with like people, having no self-regulation and then also choosing like celebrities as their avatars. I'm like, that sucked. Like, don't do that to yourself. Why would you poison your own life and your own brain by making what John Mulaney does in his private life your fucking problem? Like, who
yeah,
gives a shit if he's married, man? Do you like him? Is he funny? You don't know
yeah,
what went
yeah.
on there. Yeah. But they're like, somebody said something about, God damn, man, I wish I remembered. It was somebody who's been long, long dead. Oh, it was the painter dude, Bob Ross.
Okay.
Who's, by the way, I feel like not referenced enough in podcasts, but
Hmm.
Bob Ross was it was like a TikTok thing where some, uh Gen Zer was on TikTok or whatever, and they were like, I can never look at him the same way. Like, she said, my faith in men is shattered once I found out Bob Ross cheated on his wife. And I was like, I just want to be like, why? Like, you don't even, first of all, he's been dead forever. He's not known for his wife or his
Yeah,
fucking love life, you
and your
know?
faith in men obviously wasn't that strong to begin with. If
Yeah,
such a
exactly.
small detail, like, shatters the whole
Yeah.
facade.
Like,
Um,
took a video crying, like, fucking, what? Are you okay? Ghost?
so I think it's because of just, like, how I grew up and my parents, which is there was always a level of, like, you could really make fun of a family member, like, really
Yeah.
gut them, and that
Yep.
was fine. That's fine. That's fine because as long as it's funny, we understand that was the intent. You're
Yes.
not you're not saying you don't love me. You're gutting me to make a joke that makes everybody else laugh, and I also get to laugh. So there's a
Yeah.
level of when I would do Chelsea Lately, there were
Mhm.
comics who were like, I sat there on the panel and she was like making fun of me, and I didn't know what to do. And I was like,
Right.
really? Because she would make fun of me, and I was like, oh, thank you for paying attention to me. It's very nice.
Yeah,
Thank you for
seriously.
having me on your show and like pointing me out and treating me like one of your family members. But
Yep.
I will say that kind of mean sense of humor, uh, once we got into this whole kind of victim-y kind of mindset as a culture, anything that was remotely mean, people started to kind of turn against. And
Yeah.
I realized too when I met my wife, she just didn't grow up in that kind of household that had like meanness. Like her
Right.
mom is a very loving woman who I made a dirty joke in front of one time, and like her face, like she was almost like, I don't like she was knocked off center for a good 4 or 5 minutes, like, not sure, and all I said was, like, "Somebody else is gonna pick up the check because I can't afford this restaurant, and I'm not blowing the busboy." And
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
just like an offhanded thing, it
Sure.
wasn't even like a but she was like, "Blow the busboy." Um, but because my wife didn't grow up with, like, mean humor, and that's of deep interest to me.
Yeah.
Like, it's been a really weird thing to kind of navigate, and I just go,
Mhm.
"Oh, well, I just don't do the mean jokes with you as the butt of the joke." And what
Right.
I can do, I can make the mean joke with me as the butt of the joke, and I
Yep.
need practice at that anyway.
Right.
So I'll just use this as like self-deprecation time.
Yeah.
And strangely enough, she's gotten more mean over the time, but but very early on, I found out that she was a big Louis CK fan.
Oh, wow.
And some comics were asking me recently, they were like, "How did she respond when like all the
Mhm.
allegations came out?" And I
Yeah.
was very happy with how she responded because I remember it word for word. She was like, "Okay, come on. Everybody's been raped a little bit." You know, almost like that has nothing to do with why I'm going to see Louis CK.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
and so it's almost such a big over the top
Mhm.
response that it's not even it's acknowledging the concept, but it's also like, "Look, we're dealing with apples and oranges here, everybody. I'm
Yeah,
going to watch
yeah.
a guy talking to a microphone. That's why I'm
Right.
going." But
Yeah.
for such a nice sweetheart of a woman to have that response of like,
Yep.
"I'm gonna go
You're
see
like,
the
"That's"
comedy I wanna see." I was
Yep.
like, "Alright, mm,
Yeah. And you were like, "That's
alright,
me, I did that. That's,
yeah."
how many years of marriage right there. That's me rubbing off on her."
Actually, that was, like, early that was before I met her. That
Oh,
was, like,
shit.
really early on. Uh,
Wow.
maybe not before I met her, maybe, 2016 or so?
Right, right.
Regardless, it was before I got my hooks in her and really started to make her a
To
mean
really
person.
and you're like, "And now she's a monster."
No, she still
No, that's sweet.
will not
Yeah, we
change.
yeah, no, that's
Yeah,
awesome. That's crazy.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it is funny that that's the thing, like, I think you're right about, we got overly sensitive about certain things, and everybody just immediately anything that sounds negative, they just assume is some kind of personal attack or an attack on somebody that might be like, I had, uh, a couple podcasts early on with, somebody I didn't know and now I've come to know for a while, but she's, a master of public health, and she's got, she's an expert in, mental health, and then she's also a public health lawyer. So she's just got all of this. She's incredibly smart. We talked all the time, but we wound up having this great conversation about um, mental health, attachment styles, and being able to self-regulate. And like,
Mm,
because my whole thing was like, um,
you'll eat a
because of
pizza on the dashboard of your car.
bingo. And I don't know
Yeah,
what's wrong with me. That's my personality type.
yeah, yeah.
Can't do that. But no, but like, because of social media and all that other shit, like, the mental health crisis became everyone's problem. And I think
Mm,
that's not great for the entirety of society, right? You know what I mean? Like, I
mm,
don't even, but like where, you occasionally you would know somebody who is probably going through some shit, and everybody's mostly empathetic, I think, or they try to be. So they would totally be able to take that kind of thing on. You want to be there for your friend, your family member, whatever it is. But when suddenly it's on a global scale and you're dealing with people who are posting 24/7, and also the media kind of escalates it because now they're like, I can grab this, and this because these points of view are controversy, and I can say people on the internet feel like yada yada yada. It becomes the
yeah,
world's problem. And if you've ever lived with somebody or been, trying to manage somebody with severe mental health issues, you have to take a fucking break because you're like, now like, this is killing me. So we were
mm,
talking about like people's reluctance to self-regulate because
mm,
now they think the world has to do it for them. So whether they're seeing a comic and they say something that offends them, instead of letting it roll off, they go, I feel this way because of this guy, and I feel this way because all of you approve it. And then it's like every like, so you're all just pieces of shit, and they're like, we did this to them, when
yeah,
really it's like you have to have some modicum of like, you know okay, I'm out in public now. I'm gonna hear some shit I don't like. I gotta be able to fucking temper that shit. But people don't want to
Right.
anymore. They think it's a personality quirk as opposed to
Yeah.
something that they have to do to survive in a society.
Well, and offering other people the benefit of the doubt
Yeah.
is difficult when you stop doing it. Like getting back into
Right.
the habit of being like, I'm sure they have a reason for whatever, you know.
Right. Yeah.
I don't think the guy handed me ice cream at Wendy's and made me sit in the car because he's a fucking idiot.
Exactly.
I'm gonna go in there and ask him, "Hey, what was the deal with this? Why would you
Yeah.
ever?"
Yeah.
Uh, and so you genuinely have to like practice that and kind of go, "Oh, you were acting that way because
Right.
you just got back from this very stressful thing, and your stepmother's an alcoholic, and you just spent a week with her, and okay."
Yeah. 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 You weren't
Rather
thinking. Yeah.
than like, "Oh,
Exactly.
that person's a terrible person. I never want to talk to them again."
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
just
And
a
nothing was
lot of
done to me specifically.
yeah,
There's people I know who are like, either they think the universe is out to get them, or they're like, this person did it to me because they think I'm whatever. And I'm like, nah, dude, I think if you ask, it's fine. They might not even know you exist. They think,
yeah,
you're a Sims character, dude. Like you had no face, like it's not
right,
doesn't even matter.
right, right.
Um,
And I think that might come down to where we started a little bit, which is the willingness to be wrong, which
yes.
is I remember there was a booker for a late night show who my manager had called him and said, "Hey, I think Ryan would be good for the show. Can we send you some tape?" And the booker was like, "Well, I got to be honest with you. It's really hard to book a guy who like you'll see him in public and he looks like he just hates your guts."
Holy
And
shit.
and my manager was like, I'm not sure what happened, but I'll talk to him." And
Right.
so my manager talks to me and I'm like, I don't know what happened either.
Right.
But instead of saying, fuck that little snowflake, he can go fuck himself,
Hmm.
I'm going to call him
Yeah.
and I'm going to say, hey, I don't know what happened, but let me just say, I'm sorry. I
Yeah,
don't
man.
know if I was like, dealing with sleep issues at the time, or if I was just like in my head about something else with my dad or whatever. But I want you to know I like you for all of these good reasons. And
Yeah.
if I ever came across as not liking you, that's totally on me. I don't
Right.
even need to know what the scenario was where you disliked me. I'm just sorry
Yeah,
because that's
exactly.
not the reality of the situation. And
Right.
just to do that. And the booker was like, you know what? Yeah, say no more.
Yeah.
We don't ever have to talk about it again. Yeah,
Great.
I'm sorry too. And I was like, nah, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. And
You just
problem
you just
solved.
move on, but you have to have at least one person say, maybe I should give them the benefit of the doubt, and maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And maybe it doesn't even matter what the situation was. Maybe it doesn't matter what the details were. You
Yeah.
just you just have to practice that, and nobody wants to be wrong, so nobody wants to apologize, and
Exactly,
conflict,
man. Great
conflict.
way to bring it back around, dude.
I'm really good at that. I'm good
You're
at a
great. Yeah.
callback.
It's
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. That was great. I'm going to ask you the last three questions that I ask every guest that has been on this show over close to 300 episodes. First one is a bit of a softball question. So if you go back in time and talk to your younger self, what piece of advice would you give yourself to help you today?
Oh, I would tell young Ryan that stand-up comedy isn't what you think it's going to be. I started watching stand-up when I was like 8 years old, writing down jokes that I really liked, and like the plan was always be a stand-up comic. And I would tell young Ryan like, hey, it's not. There are a lot of different paths to the top, and it's
Yep.
not just like be the most talented, hardworking. Sometimes it's luck. Sometimes it's just being friendly. Sometimes it's good networking. You don't know
Yeah.
what your path is going to be, so don't put any weight on any of the paths.
Beautiful. That's a great quote. Don't put any weight on any of the paths. That's a great quote.
It's a little
Uh,
messy because weight on a path, like it's a little
if you
uh,
think about it, you know. Uh,
expectation. Don't put expectation on any of the paths. Yeah, there
Perfect.
you
There
go.
you go. Great.
Yeah.
Second question is what had to end in your life, good or bad, that led you to where you are today?
Um, what had to end? Um, I think it was I had to stop thinking of my parents as really, really great people
Wow.
who, are, your parents are your model for the world.
Yeah.
And as a kid, you see them all the time. You see how they do things and you know what their quirks are. But in general, you kind of go, yeah, but they're good people. And to like sit back and go, maybe not.
Right.
Maybe. I mean, I had the thought today that like my dad might have undiagnosed like autism in there a little bit. Like maybe that's why he's very dismissive with other people's opinions, and he's the sweetest guy ever. And
Right.
you
Right.
kind of it drives you crazy. Like, well, how does that add up? And
Yeah.
then when you go, oh well, maybe he's got a little touch of a personality disorder or a mental disorder that he doesn't recognize that he's that dismissive, and he's
Yeah.
probably shattered internally that he's got this massive flaw.
Right.
So yeah, you don't believe that your parents are perfect. They're
No.
probably the source of your problems.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. It's a hard realization to have too, especially I realized as we learn more about the human condition and what our brains are doing to us and like all this undiagnosed shit over the years, you're like, holy fuck. Like you just start realizing shit and you're like, man, this is a rough fucking road to go back
Yeah,
and look.
yeah.
Um,
My mom has an undiagnosed anxiety disorder for sure,
my.
for sure, and that would have changed my childhood if she would have. She should have gotten on like anxiety, depression meds
Yeah.
because she tried to deal with like depression a little bit,
Mhm.
and nothing really worked. And it wasn't until like probably 2 years ago I was like, oh well, the meds for anxiety and depression, those are different meds.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
a you can't just handle one side of the seesaw.
Yeah. And they
Um,
don't even and they don't even know like, back in the day you just kind of had to roll with everything. So it was just not a thing where you would have the time to examine, is this depression? Is this anxiety? Is it a different type of thing? You were probably just like, well, I tried and I guess this is just how I'm going to,
right. Well, my
run the
mom's
rest of my life.
anxiety basically just taught me that the world is dangerous and you should be scared at all times
Oh yeah.
because she was just worried about everything happening. And
Yep.
so it just made me
Paranoid.
super, super cautious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I was very much like that. And then also because my here's a quick. So I was walking with my uncle one day. We lived in Arizona at the time, and I had to be like 5, I think, or something like that. And my uncle didn't drive because he's legally blind, so he just walked everywhere. We were walking to the store. It was
That's a
like
good
blocks.
choice. That's a good
Yeah,
choice
yeah,
when
yeah.
you're
Yeah,
legally
you
blind.
can't
Don't
really.
drive with the kid. Yeah.
No, just not a good idea. In Mexico, you can. But anyway, so we're walking, whatever, and we're going to the store, and I start to sweat, and I stopped dead in my tracks, and he turns around, he's like, "What are you doing?" And I started to cry, and he was like, what the fuck just happened to you?" And I was like, "I'm sweating. Mom says I'm not allowed to sweat." And he was like, and my uncle was like, "What?" It's like, come on, like whatever, like I'm sure she didn't mean that, blah blah. So we get back and he like talks to my mom and he's like, "Did you tell him he can't sweat? I had he wouldn't move. Like we had to get him in a thing." He started crying, and she was like, "Oh, I was joking," but because my mom was so like hyper, like away, like all this shit, stranger danger, fucking don't leave the whatever. She had
Yeah.
joked around me one day and she just said like, "Sweating, you're not allowed to sweat," and I was like, "Fuck, I
That
didn't
is
know
a
that,"
rule. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I freaked the fuck out. I thought it was bad for you, or I thought I was gonna die. I
Mhm.
don't know. Well, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my mom taught me that everybody's got a secret agenda, and no matter how hard you work and no matter how hard you try, somebody else is gonna come along and fuck it up.
Wow.
And that was the rule of life that I carried with me and would just like when I would meet new people, I'd be play my hand super close to my vest. And I remember Whitney Cummings one day at the Comedy Store. I'd known her for like a year.
Mhm.
It was around 2007, and I don't know exactly what happened, but she came in to give me a hug, and I was like, no, 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 no hugs, not today. And
Wow.
I was being playful,
Sure, yeah.
uh, but she went, wow, it really is like kind of all or nothing with you all the time, isn't it? And I remember that hit me so hard because she clearly was
Didn't take.
recognizing that pattern with other things that I had done.
Yeah, yeah.
Like this was just the final straw of it for her. Whereas I
Sure.
didn't know I was such an all or nothing person in general. And now I realize like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's totally out of the anxiety of like, hey, let's not do a little bit, let's not do any at all. because
Right.
somebody else is going to ruin it. Um,
And that's interesting when somebody that close clocks you, and then they say something just kind of off to the side, and then it all of a sudden like flashes in your face, where you're like, oh my god, I think they're onto something.
yeah. Wow. They really read me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fucking A. Good for her.
So what's your third question? Let's go
Third
out big.
question is yeah. Third question ties into the show. So if this was a genuine dystopia, which more so than it is now, and you wake up tomorrow, it's your last day, everybody's last day on Earth.
Hmm.
What do you? It's a twofold. What do you think is going to be the eventual collapse of the entire world? Do you think it's going to be economic? You think it's going to be governmental, and it's just going to be fucking
Oh,
crazy shit AI stuff? Do you think it's going to be a comet?
yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
it'll be climate change, something like that, alien, zombies, whatever, however crazy you want to get? And how are you going to go out? What's going to be your epic death?
Interesting. So I was thinking about this last night that as far as dystopias go, like people always worry about The Road, kind of like Cormac McCarthy's The
Yeah,
Road, where it's like burning skies and like the people who didn't die from the bomb died from, radiation poisoning, and then other people are, just foraging for things. And I'm like,
right.
as a society, we're not moving toward that really at all. We're definitely moving more quickly in this other direction where technology is getting smarter and you're going to have robots building smarter robots, and it's going to
Mhm.
hit that exponential point where we're going to be a glowing ball of light,
Yeah,
and it's going to happen almost instantaneously.
right.
And while we have all of these stories like Cormac McCarthy where we have some idea of what to expect with that dystopian society,
Hmm.
yeah, glowing ball of light, we're not really ready for it all. And we don't have any time to prepare. And it's
Right.
going to be, I think it's just going to be like a flash, and all of us will be, either our bodies will just be disintegrated or our consciousnesses will be downloaded. And then we will have the utter hell of living for some sort of eternity.
Oh Jesus fuck.
And I hope that's not the case.
No, I hope that's definitely not. That is fucking frightening. If that's the case, and you just
Yeah.
know, oh man, brutal. That's great, man. That's terrifying. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that's how we end. We have a nice comedy podcast. We get to the end where we're all enslaved by the machines, but not even our bodies, just
That's
our spirit.
that's so fucking great, dude. Thank you for doing this, man. It's a blast talking to you. I feel like I could have gone on for fucking ever. You're great.
Yeah, we're good at that. We're good at that. I
Yeah,
mean, I don't even know if you introduced me.
I
It
will do
doesn't.
that.
You'll
But
do
that's
that elsewhere.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's what
yeah.
happens when
I
the magic of it.
I hope that people will
Oh
find me
yeah,
on
plug.
the
Yeah,
old internet, and
great,
that's my latest album. Behind me,
beautiful,
that's my first album. If that's
very very nice. It's blurry. Oh no, there we go. Ryan said beautiful. I love the
but
cityscape background you got.
yeah,
Where can people find you? Your website, socials.
RyanStout.com.
Beautiful.
Please go find me on. Yeah, you go there, and then everything's kind of linked from
Everything's out
there.
there.
But also listen on Spotify, Pandora. I talked about wanting to release albums, and I did.
Yep.
So there's 3 out now, and
Nice.
I'm always thrilled when people listen to them and then email me and go, "Yeah, they were actually really good. I really
Great.
liked all of that." And I go, "Amazing. Thank you for listening. I made them for you."
Yeah. Awesome,
So
dude.
yeah, please check out the work. That's all I
Great.
have. It's my origami.
Awesome having you, man. Thank you. Actually, I might name that episode Ryan's Origami. Thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate you being here. Check out Dystopia Night, wherever podcasts are. I was gonna say sold, but I'll fix that. I'll fix that later.
Yeah, wherever
Anyway,
podcasts are distributed out of trunks of
yeah,
cars.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
It's dystopia. You don't know where you
playground.
get podcasts anymore.
No, it's just gonna be beamed into your fucking brains. That's what I'm working on.
Yeah.
Dystopia tonight.